The story begins in Seoul City of South Korea, and it was an ordinary day for the citizens. It was no different from any other day for them, and all the people were busy in their daily lives. But the peace that they thought would last forever was shattered because suddenly a dungeon appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the street. The people left all the work they were doing and looked at the huge distortion at the street in tension and fear. Monsters started coming out of it in great numbers, starting to wreak havoc and disturbing the temporary peace the people had. The citizens started running from the monsters in the hope of saving themselves. Suddenly, a girl fell down on the street and no one was coming to help her. As the monster approached her and rose his axe with an intent to kill her, a teenage boy, wearing a suit with a cape, came with insane speed, while he slashed the monster in two halves with his sword, which was surrounded in a faint blue aura. The girl was awestruck by watching what took place in front of her eyes. The boy was none other than a hunter who slayed the monsters and helped the people in need. The hunters collected the resources that appeared when they killed the monsters, which made humanity prosper, and that was how the world of hunters began. Hit that like button, as today's like aim is 100 likes. Also consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. As the scene shifts, we see that someone was sitting inside the Hunter Association registration office. The lady at the desk was surprised and told the man that it was the first time that she ever saw a labor class. She asked our protagonist, Yu Jiha, if he was not having any skills or any traits. Jiha smiled as he looked at the lady nervously. He told the lady with a faint smile that he was indeed not having any skills or traits. We come to a concrete jungle, made out of huge and tall buildings, and as we reach the Sector 7 Hunter store, we see that two people entered the store together, and the Hunter store owner Jiha welcomed them onto his shop. The people who entered the shop were hunters, and the boy asked Jiha if he can get some potions from his shop. But suddenly, the girl happily pointed her finger towards Jiha while she ran towards him, asking him if he was the man who got the labor class. Jiha was confused while he replied in a yes, but the girl was still not satisfied. She asked Jiha if it was really true that he didn't have any skill or traits and wanted to know about how he hunted the monsters without any power. Hearing that, the boy told her to stop immediately while Jiha gave an artificial laughter. The boy put a basket full of potions onto the desk while he apologized for his companion's behavior, telling Jiha that she does not know how to read the room. But Jiha replied with a smile that it was okay because whatever the girl was saying was not at all wrong. It was true that Jiha did not have any special skills, so he did not hunt and instead just gathered the resources at the back. Knowing that, the girl was finally satisfied, and the man immediately asked the girl in a stern tone about why she had to ask something so insensitive to the poor man. But it was not effective on the girl, as she just replied that there was nothing wrong with her being curious. Suddenly, a large number of military tanks, along with an ambulance, rushed through the road near the hunter's shop. The girl was surprised by looking at this outside the shop's window and told the boy that a rank 3 dungeon must have opened somewhere, and that's why the army was preparing so much to tackle it. The boy added that he also saw some ambulances when he was coming to the shop. He also wanted to try getting in a place like a level 3 dungeon, but the girl woke the boy up from his dream, making him realize that their skills were far from enough for entering a level 3 dungeon. The boy was annoyed while he heard this fact, telling the girl that she was starting to bother him. As Jiha was listening to their conversation, he also thought that entering a rank 3 dungeon would be nice. As the couple exited his shop, Jiha stood outside the gate, thanking his customers. He was disappointed at the fact that he would not be contacted by the Hunters Association to clear a rank 3 dungeon and would miss a lot of useful resources. It was 5 years since Jiha was awakened and got a unique class called Laborer. But as he looked at his status window, he came to know that he was not having any skills or traits at all. It was at this moment that he knew that he could not even dream of getting inside the dungeon with other hunters to kill the monsters. But an idea struck into Jiha's mind. He decided to be at the rear, and after a company or a guild swiped the dungeon, he would start picking up the leftovers and sell it onto his shop. Even when nobody recognizes his work, Jiha was happy that he was getting enough money to support his hobby. Jiha's only hobby was reading old and antique books. He turned towards a drawer and took out a green book with a tree printed on both of its sides. As he opened the book and started reading it, he was getting drowsy in an instant. As Jiha yawned with a wide mouth, he wondered if he was getting sleepy because the book was too hard to read. As moments passed, Jiha's eyes were now heavy, and within a few seconds he was asleep onto his desk with the book wide open. Suddenly, green aura started coming out from the book that Jiha was reading, and we see that a large tree was printed on the book. The green aura surrounded Jiha and teleported him onto a mysterious place. As he woke up, he turned around nervously, trying to know where he was. As he finally surveyed the place, he wondered about where he actually was. He killed the initial thoughts of him being in a dream by pinching his cheeks as tightly as he could. Jiha immediately knew that wherever he was, it was not an illusion but a reality. Jiha opened his status window in the hopes to know if he had awakened some special skill, but it was nothing at all. Knowing that his methods were not working, he looked around the forest and noticed that it was a little weird. Jiha was not able to hear any animal sounds and was not able to see normally because of the thick fog that surrounded him. He was just able to see some twigs with a fruit that looked like it was hit by a storm. They were present on the ground ahead of a large tree trunk, which was broken apart, maybe because of the same storm. As Jiha looked closely at the plants, he knew that he hadn't seen any fruit that looks like this in his entire life. He opened the appraisal window and it notified him that the plant was an ether herb of level 1, which made the ether consumption of all skills into 0 for 10 seconds. He was shocked to see that there was a plant which can do this unreal thing. All the hunters needed ether no matter what in order to use a skill. It was somehow like a fuel to them, and the amount of ether that was going to be used depended on the strength of the skill. Jiha knew that whatever he found inside the forest was amazing, and if only he could take some liquid from the herb, it would benefit him greatly. But it was a shame that he did not bring any bottles with him. Suddenly, he noticed that a living leaf was sprouting out of the tree, which seemed to be wrecked unnaturally. He decided that he would help the plant a little, and with his delicate hands, he planted the twig near the tree branch and sprinkled some water over it, hoping that doing this would be enough to keep the plant alive. He was thankful that he found good soil and enough water nearby the tree. Suddenly, a notification popped up, telling Jiha that he has obtained the plant-friendly skill of level 1, along with the blessing of XXX, also of level 1. Jiha was shocked as he looked at the notifications with his soiled hands. He was not able to believe that he got a new skill and a trait by just planting a twig, but Jiha was still going to get multiple surprises. As the notifications disappeared, he saw a golden aura coming out from the twig he planted, and as the aura was getting stronger, the old broken tree was disappearing in front of his eyes. Jiha felt like he got an electric shock all over his body, and with that, he woke up onto the same desk he slept on. He looked at the familiar place where he spent his time on and thought that he was inside a dream, but something was different. His hands were still soiled from all the work he did, and the book he was reading was now closed, even when Jiha was not the one who did it. As he looked at his hands and the mysterious book, he immediately understood that whatever he experienced was not a dream but a reality. Jiha was still trying to reason with himself, while thinking that he must have unknowingly suffered from sleepwalking, but he knew that he locked the door and there was no place with dirt around him. Immediately, a thought struck inside Jiha's mind. He wanted to know if he would be able to go to the forest he was in, once again if he slept. He decided that he will try it out anyway, and with a smile in his face and excitement on the inside, he opened the mysterious book once again. As the scene shifts, we see that a faint green light teleported Jiha onto the mysterious forest once again, but it was not the same as before. It was wilder, and the fog was less thicker than before too. Jiha knelt down onto the ground while thinking that he has never heard about a dungeon where the people can enter when they fall asleep. But as he looked at the twig he planted before, he saw a fruit hanging on the tree just ahead of it. An appraisal window popped up, telling Jiha that it was a solar apple. and if it will be combined with a health potion, the healing amount will increase by 20%, and the time duration it took to heal the user will decrease to 80%. Jiha was surprised to the core to see that he was indeed looking at a solar apple, which was hard to find even in high-ranked dungeons. He knew that the current healing potions in the market can only replenish 10% of maximum health, but adding the solar apple to it can give 20% additional healing and even reduce the healing time. But surprises were still to come to him, as Jiha looked around and saw that there was not only a single solar apple, but a large quantity of them, scattered all over the mysterious forest he was in, hanging onto large trees of the forest. He knew that if he took the solar apples and the ether herb liquid, he would be able to make incredible potions with outstanding effects. Jiha was now in a dilemma, thinking about whether he should take 1 or 2 apples out of the forest or not, but he was not having anything to carry the materials with him. Suddenly, something slammed down onto Jiha's face, and as he used the appraisal skill on it, he came to know that it was a dimensional pouch. Jiha wondered if he would be able to put the things from the mysterious forests inside the pouch and take them to the general store with him. The pouch even had some glass bottles inside of it for storing the ether liquid. Jiha was not able to believe that just when he was thinking about taking the mysterious items home, the dimensional pouch fell onto his face. According to him, it was not a good thing, but instead it was a shocking as well as a scary thing. But Jiha was happy anyway, by getting the things he needed for the mysterious forest. The next day, a horde of hunters was gathered inside the famous hunter specialty chain store in District 7, named the Hunting Ground. The hunters made a commotion as one of them screamed at the retailer for not having any more paralysis resistance potions. But he was just apologizing to the hunter and told him to wait for just an hour for more items, as the shop was out of stock. The hunters were panicked by hearing this and hurriedly started contacting other places. A female hunter screamed that they must enter into the dungeon in 30 minutes or the gate will close. But a man told the lady in a disappointing tone that there was no resources left at even the witch's cauldron and the pyramid store. Suddenly, the man turned around as he heard the door and saw a lady covered in a beautiful black armor with golden accents. The man knew that she was none other than Seo Hyojin, the sword witch. She came near the desk and asked the retailer to call the manager of the store. All the hunters stopped their constant screaming and rambling and stood in a circle, giving way to Hyojin. Many of the hunters were awestruck by looking at her for the first time. They were not able to believe that she had rare class equipment and artifacts from Tier 4 dungeons, but they also knew that as Hyojin was at the 12th place in the hunter ranking, it was the reason for her having the rare items with her. The manager called out to Hyojin, telling her that he had no idea that she would come to the shop in person. Hyojin replied that she had to came to the shop herself because the manager was not answering to her calls. She immediately asked the manager if the potion they talked about yesterday was ready or not, but the manager instantly apologized to her, while telling her that the shop had a lot of bookings originally, so Hyojin's potion was still being prepared. The manager was going to ask her to wait a bit, but before he could even finish his sentence, Hyojin told him that she can't wait because she had to finish preparations in 30 minutes and enter the dungeon. Hyojin took out her phone and looked at the map application to look for general stores around the place she was at. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha was preparing a golden liquid inside his scientific glass bottle. He checked the constituents of the potion again, remembering if something was left behind by mistake. He poured the solar apple concentrate into the mix, and as a drop of it was dropped into the liquid, it started giving off a faint aura. A notification popped up telling Jiha that due to XXX blessing, a great success verdict was applied to the potion, and it became a special potion of level 1, which decreased the ether consumption for skills to 0 from 14 seconds and recovered 14% of maximum health over 15 seconds. He also got the alchemy skill for finishing the potion. Jiha was shocked by looking at the skills he was getting back to back. He was not able to believe that he even got the alchemy skill, which even the self-proclaimed alchemists did not have. But he was still wondering about the XXX's blessing he got and the effect it did to the potion. Jiha wondered if selling the potion before knowing about his traits and abilities would be alright. He did not know about how much he should charge for the potion, but the effect was a bit hard to believe. Jiha knew that even if he told someone that his potion will make Etha's skill consumption 0 for 14 seconds, they will not believe him. Jiha decided that he will try his special potion on himself first, but before he could even open the bottle, Hyojin entered through his shop's door. Jiha immediately turned on his happy shopkeeper mode and welcomed the lady into his shop, not knowing who she was. But Hyojin immediately ran towards Jiha, getting close to him while she asked if he had any potions in his shop. She was in a hurry because there was no time to spare as she had to enter the dungeon. Suddenly, she noticed the golden potion, which was still kept onto the desk, and asked Jiha if it was a health potion. He agreed to the lady, telling her that it was indeed a health potion, but it was not for sale. But before listening to what Jiha had to say, Hyojin apologized to him, as there was no time left for her to waste. She grabbed the golden potion into her hands and started walking away as she threw some bills onto the desk, while telling Jiha that if the money was not enough, he should contact Hyojin's guild. Before Jiha could react and understand what has happened with him just now, the lady was already disappeared in an instant. As the scene shifts, we see that Hyojin entered into the dungeon at the nick of time, and the monsters were waiting for her arrival. She immediately landed onto the ground and took out her sword, instantly killing all the monsters in her way. The gatherers who came behind Hyojin were baffled to look at her insane skills. As they expected, rank 12 was completely different, and there was nothing for them to do inside the dungeon. The small guy told the tall guy that even when it was nice and comfortable, it does not feel quite right to follow the sword witch without raising their own skills, but the tall man started collecting leather from the monsters, while he told the small boy to not bother the lady and quietly gather the resources. He told his companion that if it were the old Hyojin, she would have asked them to catch the monster together. But ever since that incident took place, she changed to a complete solo player. The small guy was not able to understand about what his companion was saying, but the tall guy knew that his companion must have no knowledge about the incident as he was a newbie. He was going to tell him about the incident, but suddenly both of them were interrupted by Hyojin as she came running towards them with insane speeds while telling them to run. Both the boys were confused, thinking about why the lady was acting like that. But then they saw a huge monster with a tail and hands having pincers like a scorpion. As Hyojin stood in front of the creature, she knew that it was none other than the Manstalker, an aversion-level monster who was the size of an armored car and was very dangerous as it uses extreme poison from its tail and pincers to kill its prey. The boys were deeply struck in fear, not able to comprehend about why an aversion-level monster that appears in a Tier 4 dungeon was instead present in such a low-level dungeon. Hyojin materialized multiple swords of light while she used her magic and screamed toward the boys, telling them to run once again. She immediately jumped from the ground, high up into the air to look at the monster into its eyes. She immediately took out her huge sword and attacked at the monster with a heavy blow. But to her surprise, the monster was able to easily block her heavy attack and threw Hyojin with such force that she was flying into the air with insane speeds, breaking all the trees which came into her way. Just by that one attack, Hyojin was not able to even stand on her two legs. She immediately realized that the monster was too strong, and even her ether was almost consumed. She thought that even if she was not able to save herself, she must buy time for the other two boys to run away. Hyojin started wondering about what her Seungyeok Appa would do at times like these if he was with her. She interrupted her train of thoughts as she knew that the man was not around anymore, and she can only believe in herself now. She popped the cork out of the golden potions bottle as a last resort and drank it all in one go. Suddenly, she felt as if she was overflowing with ether, and even the potion was as delicious as a beverage. She immediately knew that she can fight once again, and launched herself into the air once again, while she used the powerful sword rampage, slashing the monster multiple times, cutting it into small pieces. As the monster was now slain and dropped dead to the ground, She was not able to believe that on top of health recovery, the potion was able to totally stop the ether consumption for her skills. Thanks to that, she could use powerful sword rampage for 10 seconds in succession, when she could only normally use it for just 3 seconds. Hyojin looked at the empty bottle of the golden potion and knew that she was able to achieve this feat due to the mysterious potion given to him by the mysterious shopkeeper of the mysterious shop. I would like you all to hit that like button as today's like aim is 500 likes. Also do subscribe for more videos. Now let's get back to the video. The story continues, and we see that after the Manstalker dungeon incident, Seo Hyojin was back at Jiha's shop, screaming at him as soon as she entered. Jiha welcomed her in nervousness, thinking about why this lady customer was always angry, but Hyojin immediately asked Jiha about what the potion he sold to her was, but as she noticed some chattering, she looked behind of her, where everyone in the shop has identified Hyojin, talking to each other about how she took care of a swarm of manstalkers by herself the last day. She was flustered and backed down from Jiha's body, apologizing to him for being rude. Jiha accepted the apology and asked the lady if she had some problems with his potion. Hyojin told Jiha that she had never seen a potion that can heal 14% of HP and cost no ether. But Jiha was listening to what the lady was saying, and instead told her that he saw the post too, where the lady eliminated the aversion monster by herself with her amazing attacks. Hearing that, Hyojin slammed her hands onto Jiha's desk, telling him that it was not her but the potion that he gave her that did the work in her place. She inquired to Jiha about how he got the potion, or did he brew the potion himself. Hearing that question from the lady, Jiha took out the solar apple and showed it to Hyojin, telling her that he used the solar apple that he luckily found in a Tier 0 dungeon. But Hyojin was smart. She was not ready to believe that Jiha can get something so rare as a solar apple in a Tier 2 dungeon, but Jiha knew that telling Hyojin about the mysterious forest could go wrong, so he decided to make excuses instead. Jiha told the lady that he was happy, that his potion helped her in completing the dungeon. Hyojin was looking somewhere else, ignoring what the shopkeeper was saying. Instead, she asked Jiha about what the blue liquid kept on the shelf was. Jiha replied that it was an ice resistance potion, and it gave 32% ice resistance to the user, which lasted for 40 minutes. Hyojin was stuck to the core by hearing about such a great item. Even the best quality ice resistance potions in the market gave only 10% resistance and lasted for only 15 minutes. And in comparison to that, when she heard Jiha saying something so extraordinary, she was not able to believe it. Jiha remembered that as he was wandering around the mysterious forest, he saw some winter strawberries growing around that place, which gave 20% ice resistance for 30 minutes to the user. He collected a basket full of them and made ice resistance potions with it, acquiring level 2 alchemy skill. Hyojin unbelievably asked Jiha about the place where he found the materials of the ice resistance potion. But hearing the same excuse from him about the Tier 0 dungeon, she immediately knew that Jiha was a bad liar. She decided to not ask him about it anymore, since he was uncomfortable. But for that, she wanted to buy all the ice resistance potion available in his shop. She slammed an envelope full of cash, telling Jiha that she did not need a receipt in return. As she was getting out of the shop in a hurry, Jiha yelled with all his might, telling Hyojin that the cash she gave him was much more than the potion's actual worth. But she ignored Jiha, telling him that even that much money was not enough for potions this extraordinary. The lady realized that she did not know the seller's name and asked him about it. Jiha introduced himself, and as he told his name to the lady, she complimented him, saying that it was a nice name and she would meet him in the future too. Man, is our boy Jiha getting a girlfriend soon anyways. As the scene shifts, Jiha was back again into the mysterious forest. He collected multiple glowstones and kindle gems along with winter strawberries, as he needed a refill of materials for his shop. He sat down with his dimensional pouch on the side, wondering about why there were so many resources in the forest without any monsters or danger. He was not able to comprehend about where the mysterious forest was, but suddenly he noticed a rattling sound coming from long grass. He immediately stood up and started going towards the direction of the sound, knowing for sure that there was something definitely at that place. As he looked around, he saw a cute little beetle lying onto the ground. The system told Jiha that the creature was a pterodrone, a mythic monster who was a small car-sized monster that looked like a beetle with giant claws. Jiha was shocked to see a pterodrone in the mysterious forest. He even wondered about why they were looking so small. But as he tried to follow the group of the cute creatures, he saw that there was a barrier put up in place, and he can't go past it. Suddenly, he saw that the group of pterodrones were going towards the devil ants, a hazard monster who is the size of a cargo truck, and killing one of them attracted 10 more of them, which made it difficult to eliminate them. Jiha was amused to see that the pterodrones and devil ants were fighting with each other, like they were in some kind of war. Jiha had already read something about the devil ants from a book before. He knew that they were hazard monsters, and the poison that they secreted made them more dangerous than even the aversion monsters. But something was still stuck into Jiha's mind. Every notification told him that the monsters were either car-sized or truck-sized, but they were looking so small to him that he was not able to comprehend about why it was written so about them. Suddenly, he saw that a devil ant was overpowering a pterodrone, and he was trying to get away. Knowing that the pterodrones are all losing, Jiha wondered about the reason they were still fighting so hard for. He knew for sure that the cute creatures will lose if it kept going like this and wanted to help them. It was as if the system has heard him, and a notification popped up in front of Jiha, which stated that the war between him and his pterodrones against the devil ants has begun. The system asked Jiha if he wanted to help out his legion of pterodrones in this fight. Reading this, Jiha was shocked by knowing that he can intervene in between the fight. Even when he was a little confused by the system's wording, he still decided to help out the pterodrones. The notification told him that his legion was losing right now, and he can use his essence to cast an area buff. It gave multiple options to Jiha, which included the increase in health points, along with resistance to poison and physical damage. Jiha can even use the labor's blessing for the pterodrones. He was amused to see that even when he cannot help the creatures directly, he can give assistance to them like this. The options had to do something with a material called essence, and as Jiha opened his hands, he had 2 of them. So he decided that he will choose the labor's blessing to bless the cute little pterodrones. Suddenly, a yellow aura surrounded all the creatures, giving them an immense buff. The creatures who fell down were now standing up, flapping their small wings intensely and flying towards the devil ants with insane speeds. All the pterodrones started attacking the devil ants and were defeating them one by one. It was just a matter of time, and the pterodrones were eventually able to finish all the devil ants, seizing victory into their cute little pincers. Jiha was so happy by the indirect win he has got and looked at the cute creatures as they were celebrating their win with smiles. Jiha thanked the pterodrones for protecting the forest, telling them that they did good work. But suddenly, all the pterodrones gathered in front of him and gave him a huge amount of essence and essence stones. Jiha smiled at this gesture and confused the pterodrones. He picked up only 5 essences and essence stones and told the pterodrones that they were the ones who fought with their lives on the line, and only this much materials were good enough for Jiha, considering the help he gave the creatures. But as soon as he picked the materials up, Jiha saw that the protective barrier was now gone along with the fog. Seeing this, Jiha was so happy and excited as he thought that even when he was only going to stay for a bit inside the mysterious forest, he may not be going back to his shop for a while now. As the scene shifts, we come to the Hunter Net. After the appearance of Dungeon and Hunters, a community for hunters known as the Hunter Net was created. And right now, the only thing famous on the Hunter Net was the rank 12 sword witch SEO Hyjin. A red-haired lady was sitting on a desk inside a dark room, typing something inside a chat room. She was actually fighting with another chatter, telling him that there should be no dispute about Hyjin soloing the man's stalker dungeon. But the person contradicted, saying that there was also no dispute that it was something that Hyjin couldn't do by herself. But the number of people entering the dungeons was always known to the people, and it was hard to believe that Hyjin hunted with someone. The lady also replied that Hyojin had been a solo player ever since Han Xianjuk disappeared. The person on the other side hoped that Hyojin would forget about Han forever. But the lady was getting frustrated by this thought of his, knowing that the chatter didn't give a fuss because it was not his problem but someone else's. She replied that Hyojin's significant other disappeared in the dungeon, so it gave her the right to miss him as much as she wants, but the person replied that it has already been 3 years, and she even started going around the dungeons alone to find Han. Even when the lady tried to reply again, the person wanted to stop talking about a person who went missing. He even suspected the girl to be Hyojin herself because she was talking about Han so much. This pissed off the girl to the core as she yelled that the guy crossed his line. But suddenly, lights turned on inside her room, and a tall man in a coat entered the room. He was Cholhyun, the Eternal Flame Guild's top alchemist. He asked the lady if she was indeed a zombie for working in a dark room. The lady raised her hands to release the muscle tension while telling the alchemist that she can only concentrate better when it was dark. She asked the man if he looked into what she asked him to do. The man told her that he went to the place in person, to the lowest ranked hunter with no traits and skill, Jiha. And as expected, he did not feel anything special from him. The lady was a little worried, as she knew that if Jiha was a normal man, then he had nothing to do with Hyojin getting stronger all of a sudden. But suddenly, the man replied that even when Jiha was a normal guy, he was selling some special items in his shop. The man asked the lady if she knew what a solar apple was. The lady was bewildered by hearing the name for the first time. But the man explained that the solar apple was a very rare item that drastically reduced ether usage of players. The man admitted that even he had never seen it in person until he got to Jiha's shop. He explained that the potion given to Hyojin was brewed out of the solar apple, and Jiha sells it as a potion for a very cheap price. The lady was surprised by hearing this information, knowing for sure that if the solar apple was real, then the potions made of it cannot be that cheap. But the man told the lady as he sat down that Jiha must have not known the true value of the solar apple, or he must have not. He was interrupted by the lady as she said that Jiha was not a person with greed. With an excited look, the lady stood up while telling the man that she needed some fresh air, so she is going to see this Jiha guy herself. The man asked the lady in an urgent voice if he should get the car ready for her. But the lady replied that she was not a CEO or something to get into a car whenever she wanted to go out. The man was confused by the lady's statement, telling her that even if she was not a CEO, she was in a similar position. As the red-haired lady was excited and her eyes were glittering in expectations, we come to know that she was none other than Cha-yeon, the Eternal Flame Guild Master. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha was sitting onto a wooden log with a little campfire burning in front of him. He realized that it was colder in the deeper parts of the forest and was happy that he decided to bring a lighter earlier. As the wall and fog that blocked the inner forest disappeared, Jiha decided to look around, but there was not any big difference noticeable to him. Jiha knew that he didn't explore the forest fully because some places were too dangerous for him to go. As he looked at his side, he can feel an ominous purple aura coming out of the place at his side. He did not want to put himself into more danger, so he decided to head back to the shop now. But as Jiha turned around, he saw that the group of pterodrones from before were following him, while wanting to give Jiha the mist-chasing flower seeds. Seeing that Jiha had noticed them, the creatures raised their cute hands up and offered him the mist-chasing flower seeds. Jiha was surprised to see that the mist-chasing seeds were for him, and he even noticed a pterodrone which was slightly bigger than the others. He asked the creature if he was the group's leader, but just then, he noticed that the group of pterodrones came out of the same ominous place where Jiha was hesitant to go to. Suddenly, a notification popped up in front of him, telling Jiha that the pterodrones had requested him to rescue their queen. Jiha guessed that even the pterodrones must have had a queen like ants or bees, and immediately realized that the mist-chasing flower seeds were offered by the pterodrones to ask him to help them. The cute creatures were looking at Jiha with their cute glittery eyes, wanting to persuade him to help them. It worked well because Jiha was not able to disagree to the Pterodrone's request. Even when he was a little bit scared, he decided that he will help the cute creatures. Jiha rubbed the Pterodrone's head with his finger, while telling him that he will have to prepare stuff before he initiated the rescue operation, so he will do it the next day. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha readied the healing potions and poison and physical resistance potions along with some combat ration for the Pterodrones. Knowing that the basic preparations were done, Jiha knew that if he added an area buff like the last time, devil ants should be defeated easily by his Pterodrones. As the Pterodrones ate happily till their stomach was full, they were full of energy. Jiha ordered them to start the rescue mission of their queen, and upon hearing that, all the Pterodrones flew towards the location of their queen with gleaming eyes, which showed their trust towards Jiha. He decided to follow them, and after some time, he was finally at the source of the ominous feeling he was getting before. Jiha along with the Pterodrones were now at a devil ant's hive, which was giving off a faint purple aura, giving it an ominous look. Looking at the place where the devil ants lived, Jiha knew that the hive must be at least 3 meters tall. We see that the devil ants and the Pterodrones clashed with each other, and finally, the war between the Pterodrones and the devil ants has begun. Both the parties started clashing with each other, and Jiha was awestruck by witnessing this phenomenon, as he noticed that the Pterodrones were doing better than the last time they fought. But he knew that the Pterodrones were still in danger due to the devil ant's poison. Suddenly, a notification popped up, telling Jiha that he can assist the Pterodrones with his power, but the use was limited to only one time. He can help the Pterodrones by putting the devil ants with wings onto the ground with a strong slap, but it consumed 3 essences if he decided to do so. Jiha saw that he can finally help the Pterodrones and finally was a little happy, but using a slap to help them in a situation like a war was a little weird for him. But suddenly, he saw that a large devil ant with wings was coming out of the devil ant hive. It was the winged devil ant who acted as a messenger. An emergency notification popped up, telling Jiha that the devil ant army's messenger is trying to send a message to call the main army to help them fight the war. But Jiha immediately realized that he can stop it from happening by assisting the Pterodrones with his slap. Jiha clenched his fists and decided to do it anyways. The winged devil ant was now into the battlefield, going to call the main army for help. But just in a second, a huge hand came crashing down onto the ant and slammed it onto the ground. As the camera zooms out, we see that it was Jiha who stopped the messenger ant from calling out for reinforcements. Around a street filled with buildings, a lady is thinking about if this place is the general store that sells that solar apple. On the outside it looks just like an ordinary general store, but she does not know what kind of secret lies within. Co Hyojin certainly said that she caught the man stalker after visiting this place, so she also decides to uncover that secret, but she finds that it's locked. This is definitely strange because the sign here says that it's open, then maybe they just went into the restroom. Then she asks a nearby person about if they are open today. The person tells her that he's not sure because they have not been open since yesterday. The young man who works there is not often open these days. He also thinks that young people these days have no professional mindset. The lady definitely heard that they're closed on the weekends, but hearing that they are often closed is something she did not expect. But she did expected this general store, and in fact even that guy called Yujiha to be a bit weird. Something must be up. Then we see a young man looking at something whose amount he hopes should be enough. But enough or not, it certainly made a lot of monster-looking ants really angry. Not only ants, but some beetle-looking monsters are also really angry, who then go behind the ants to make them cry. But the young man relieved that he somehow finished it safely. But he wonders if their queen is still inside the ant nest. Just when he was wondering about all this, he notices that they rescued her. It seems like it was quite struggle, but now hopefully things will quiet down. The young man also tells her that it's fine, she does not have to overwork herself. For him it's a relief that she's fine. Then a message pops up saying that the Pterodrone Queen wishes to pledge allegiance to him. If he signs a contract with the Pterodrone Corps, he will become a sponsor of the Pterodrone Corps and receive several items. Of course, he will have to grant their requests too. There's no need to think about it, it's not difficult either. He believes that they can help each other out. Then he sees the Pterodrone General from that time. His evolution has just been completed. It certainly looks like a general now. He also notices how they are bringing a lot of it again. He told them he didn't need that much, but still, he would be satisfied with just 10 essence and a bit of ether stone. Then he takes a look at something in his hand. These are the seeds that the Pterodrone general gave him. One of them is a wild grape seed and other one is tree fruit seed. Now he has no idea what in the world even a tree fruit seed is. Like, does a tree grow with tree fruit? Well, whatever it is, he will find out once he grows it. The forest will take care of the rest. Then he also wonders if he should build a cabin next. Then next day in a certain dungeon we see some kind of portal. Some folks come out of it who are hoping to reach the queen ant here. He hopes that after this he would be able to earn a lot of money after robbing the ant nest properly. One of them thought that the quest has already been cleared, but then the other one points out that the dungeon just opened. Then how could that be? Then they all see something which is right in front of them. They themselves see that the ant nest seems like it's empty. Maybe it was cleared in different region, but that cannot be the case because a cleared dungeon would not open for the second time. But still he is unable to believe this, so he decides to check it out himself. After analyzing for a bit, they realize that even though they don't know who it was, but it seems like there was indeed an attack because he does not see any live ants. But their leader asks them to stop all this nonsense and just find the traces of the ants. He also wonders if it is possible that all of them are gone. Then one of them notices something on the ground. There is a really big handprint of something on the ground. They also realize that this looks like a palm of someone. It is really scary for them to think about whose palm is this. Maybe some kind of giant. But even if it's another monster, it should be at the level of destruction though. Whatever it is, he does not want to wait around and find out, so he just runs away. While running away, he asks others if they really think they will be able to fight and win against the monster that annihilated the devil ants. If they are not careful, they too will be killed without even being able to do anything. So for now, first they decide to retreat and contact the association. They send the photo of that giant palm to the association, where someone sees it on their laptop. The association is told that this was discovered at the devil ant nest, and also that they said that it was already cleared. Goryeo Group successor Kim Hyung-suk notes this report and says that they should also report to him if anything else comes up. After taking a look at the palm, he realized that it's not an ordinary monster, and it's too big to be a new species either. Then it means that it's a mythic grade monster that he does not know of. Maybe a monster above the destruction grade has appeared again. Strange things keep on happening around there, but still he does not want that terrible thing to happen once again. Next chapter begins at Seoul area number 5. Jiha is standing there. Then suddenly he hears someone call his name. She asks if he had to wait long. Now that she is quickly coming towards him, he gets a little bit concerned and asks her that he's okay. She does not have to run because she might trip and fall. And just as he was warning her, she trips and falls. Then the MC helps her get up and he is really worried and asks if she is okay. But for her, the only thing that needs to be okay is the book. So she happily says that book is safe, but MC certainly did not meant about the book as he meant about the person, because he cares about the person a bit more than the book, even though books are really important for him. Then MC introduces this clumsy sis as Hwang Sunyo, South Korea's one and only origami hunter. Now any one of you can wonder, why did she even trip? Was it an honest mistake or some other reason? Well, according to her explanation, since it has been a while since she worked out, she just forgot how to even walk. She is an insane bookworm just like the MC. In fact, this is how they got close. Then a bookworm like this probably would not even have had her breakfast. The MC himself gives it to her. Now even the lady understands why Jiha waited so much, because if he would not have waited, then he could not have given her this food to eat, and since even the smell is really nice coming from it, she is very thankful of the MC. Then comes the most important part as we see Hwang pass the book towards the MC. She then tells about how when she went to the store last time and the manager there was sad, because people bought this book for decoration and they were all asking for a refund. The manager got really traumatized after seeing everyone just refund the book. MC asks if that is why she bought the book, cause she felt bad for the manager. Then she replies that yes, she thought it would fit Jiha's store interior very well. So in the end, even she bought it for decoration purposes. Hopefully she will not go back for refund for it either. MC himself laughs clumsily, but even for him, a book that was refunded continuously, that's kind of scary. Then just as the book comes into possession of the MC, he notices something. As the book in his hand starts glowing, he receives a message telling him that he just acquired an infinite spell book. But to write a spell in this book he will need Thunderbird's feather and various ink. This book is clearly very valuable, so he asks if she is really sure that this is just a decoration, because maybe some other book was meant for decoration, and this was some kind of mistake that she got this one. Hwang herself is not sure, but since there wasn't anything written in the book, and when she tried writing something on it she just could not do it. All of these factors are making her think that due to all that the manager must have said, it's just a decoration. But MC realizes that it certainly is not the case. H1 was unable to write anything because to write something in this book there are special requirements. In fact, that has to be the reason why MC got the message just now. But the sis H-Wang should also have gotten the message. This makes the MC wonder why she didn't get the message. Seeing MC in such deep thoughts, H-Wang thinks that maybe he did not like the book, so she says sorry. But MC quickly corrects her, as there is no way he would not like such an extremely valuable item. So of course he likes it. This finally makes Huang's face glow up, as she is now really happy. Then MC also promises her that he will use this book really wisely. Then when Jia himself tries writing something in it, he also finds out that even he actually can't write anything in it for now. So just as the instructions said, he will need the Thunderbird's feather and various ink first before he can start writing in that book. Now he can get information about the Thunderbird somehow, but the Thunderbird itself is a colossal avian creature, very rare in various desolate terrains excluding the oceans of the polar desert. It even has a wingspan of approximately 25 meters, so he will have to hunt this to get the feather. But besides it being just very rare to find, even if he does manage to find it, then how is he supposed to hunt this giant colossal bird? So it seems like he will just end up using it as actual decoration now. But just when he was losing all hope, his hand starts glowing up while he receives the message telling him that he just acquired the trait Nice Handwriting Level 1. And not just that, he gets another message telling him that he has also acquired the skill Ancient Magic Level 1. Jia starts looking at his hand and wonders if he actually got a new trait right now, and it is nice handwriting. Then why does he not feel anything different from earlier when he did not have any of that trait? But then again, he does realize that getting this trait at this time can't be just a coincidence, as it has to mean something really great. Maybe now he can write in that book, so he starts doing it in order to find out if that will work now or not. And just as we thought that this is not just a coincidence and something great, now we can all be certain about it, because now he is able to write a lot of things, and the first thing that he writes about is that Thunderbird, which he will not have to hunt any longer after writing just this small amount. His nice handwriting skill even levels up. So now he has nice handwriting of level 2. If only I could have gotten nice handwriting this easily back in my school days. Realizing that this trait even levels up, MC is also happy. After getting this nice handwriting trait, Jia tried a few different things, and after trying them he found out 2 things about it. One is that he cannot write anything on the infinite spellbook even with the nice handwriting trait. So what we earlier thought that he can write is not correct. Maybe he did not write on that book, he just wrote on some random paper. Now let's come to the second thing that he found out, and that is his handwriting gets really pretty. And this is the reason why I felt that I should also have some kind of trait like this. Even Jia feels like this is an amazing trait in a way, because previously he had pretty bad handwriting, so now at least he would not have to be ashamed for writing anything. But still he will have to hunt that Thunderbird, which won't be easy. At least not as easy as improving his handwriting. Then suddenly his whole body feels something really powerful around him. The feeling was very intense, but Jia has no idea about what it was. But he does want to find out about why he felt that way, so he moves around to see if he can find anything. And just as he expected, it was not just some random feeling, because he has found the reason he felt that way. It was due to this gate opening here. But that's not all, because he also gets a message telling him about the quest that he will have to do. Its difficulty is quite high, and he will have to go to a grassland valley where his target will be Thunderbird's feather, and he will just have about an hour to do it. There is also a target restriction of laborer. This is really surprising for Jia, because he did not think that the portal nearby would be for going straight to the Thunderbird's place. Now he wonders if the nice handwriting trait affected something which caused this to happen. The aura of the spotter also seems really dangerous, but it's rank O, so it should be fine. And it's not like he'll stay in there for very long, so he decides to just go in and out. Inside the portal there are quite a lot of beautiful scenes to look at, like this amazing waterfall forming a little bit of rainbow around it. Jia is inside the portal, and now it's time to look all around for his target. At first he wonders if this is the Thunderbird's habitat. But after looking around for a bit, now he doesn't think that it will fit a giant bird. But then suddenly he feels something is behind him. And behind him he gets to see a really scary sight, as just when he thought that this habitat would not fit a giant bird. The giant bird comes right behind him, and its red eyes are making it seem even scarier. Jia realizes that this has to be the Thunderbird, but how can he hunt it now when he himself seems to have become the prey? The bird is really big, and its claws are also big enough to easily capture someone like Jia, who is like a tiny little bug in front of it. Jia wonders how is a bird so big that its size is like that of a building. After coming face to face with such adverse situation, Jia just cannot think of any way in which he can hunt that. But then we see a feather drop right behind him. Maybe he will not have to hunt the big scary crazy Thunderbird after all. Because the Thunderbird was not here to hunt him or anything, it was just here to give him its own feathers that he needed so much. Almost as if the bird is saying to him, and I quote, "Use it well, peasant." Even Jia is surprised when he sees it leave. I guess we were scared of the bird for nothing, as it is a very nice bird. Better than a lot of human beings I know, who just take instead of giving back anything. Now having to hunt a scary crazy big Thunderbird. All Jia has to do is just pick up the feathers which are lying on the ground all around him. Why do I feel like this guy is getting everything very, very easily? I mean, I am happy for the guy, but just look at my subscriber count. Why can't I get subscribers and views this easily? Or even some nice amount of likes? And it's not like I'm the only one who feels this way. Jia himself is surprised at how easy all of this is turning out to be. Now that he has the Thunderbird's feathers, the next thing he needs to procure is ink. Because remember, there were 2 things that he needed before he can write in that infinite spell book of his. If he fails to find both of those items, then that spell book would just be as good as some random piece of decoration. But there is no need to worry because Jia has already thought of something. There is no way he would allow something that valuable to be relegated to just some random piece of decoration. Because he wants to make full use of its features. For that he goes to get some green herb extract. His little friend found it very, very fast. Now Jia feels really good that he asked him, and he is really grateful for his little friend's help. So I guess in a way we can say even this was very easy for him. With these items that he have right now, the preparation phase is over. Now the last thing that he needs to do is to solve the mystery of that infinite spell book. Those who were just considering it a decoration are certainly losing something really valuable without even realizing it. But then again, they would not have the life so easy like this Jia guy who gets everything handed out to him whenever he needs them. So maybe those other people are more like us who have it really hard in life. Now I feel bad for them as they are seeming to be more relatable to me than this overlucked out MC. But I also want to see the mystery of this spell book, so let's see what happens next. And hopefully we will not have to wait too long to find out, because Jia himself is wondering what kind of spells are in this infinite spell book. Whatever they are, he is really eager to discover them himself. So he puts the pen to the paper to reveal what lies within it. Just when the pen touches the book, something incredible starts happening as we see a magical glow start to manifest around the surrounding. Jia himself is surrounded by some random numbers in a magical formation all around him. It's almost as if he has started his journey down a dark rabbit hole. Slowly the darkness fades away as we see some really nice green trees and bushes. The tree is glowing a lot, and soon Jia finds himself in front of that glowing tree. And as the glow fades away, Jia sees something which is really surprising for him. Because it's Rune World, so I guess he even got this pretty easily. Jia once saw it in an old book. Some great tree taught the ancient tribe about 4 magic spells, and those 4 spells were creation, harmony, change, and destruction. I think that even those ancient tribe people got these crazy sounding spells rather easily if a tree just went ahead and told them about using them. But then just when I was thinking about this, MC goes ahead and explains further that originally it was very difficult to control these magic spells. So I guess difficulty was involved initially, but later it got really easy. And with that, in the end, they discovered runewords through an expedient method. MC did further research, after which he learns that the world tree of the beginning taught them the magic spells, but the ancient magic was difficult to use, so they made runewords to use the magic. So they made it easy, so now Jia can use them easily. The difficulty was for the tribe's people, as they had to deal with all the work of making a really difficult magic system easy to use. But this guy will still have it easy because he can just use the easy method they worked so hard to create. Then Jia says that he has never heard about runewords in his life, so maybe someone is trying to use runewords. Now we come back to Jia, who is standing awestruck in front of that tree, on which a lot of weird looking letters are written in a glowy magic thing. Jia thinks that they are runewords. This means that runewords will come out after fulfilling the conditions to use a spell book, but why are they engraved on the tree and not in the spell book? This is a little bit confusing for Jia. After taking a closer look, Jia wonders if that tree is the tree branch that he planted when he first came to this dream forest. But then after thinking about it again, he thinks that maybe that is not the case, because there's no way the world tree would be that small. Then he thinks that since he does not know when they will disappear, so he is getting a feeling that maybe he should just write them down before something like that happens. But there is something more to think about. Will it work if he just writes those characters as they are? But there is something really strange about all these things, because even though it's Jia's first time seeing all those runewords, he still thinks that he knows what they mean, even though they are just random letters. The ones in front of him right now means destruction. Thy flame will set everything on fire. So this one seems like it is one of those destruction spells. With something like this in his arsenal, hunting a big crazy scary bird probably won't be that much of a problem. Now Jia has nicely written all of them down thanks to his trait of nice handwriting, which he got very easily, and which also levels up. But the phrase is certainly very brutal. And just after he wrote it down, a message appears in front of him telling him that he now has a scroll of change named Destruction. It increases the destruction power of rune magic. With this now we also know that if Jia writes rune words down, then it will turn into a scroll. Quite an easy method to get such powerful magic, I would have to say, but whatever. Good for poor little Jia. Now since it has turned into a scroll, he will have to tear it. And now it is also looking like a proper scroll, which is really cool. I just hope someone does not use it as a toilet paper and cause some serious destruction at places it is not wanted. Then just when he was thinking of writing about 99 more rune words in order to make more of those cool scrolls, the book starts glowing. So far, whenever something glows, we get to see crazy things being given to Jia easily. So I wonder what's next in that crazy series. Well, no need to wonder a lot, because next we get to see the book page, which he just tore down, get restored on its own. So if even someone uses this scroll as toilet paper, it is not too much trouble for Jia, because he can just write more and make more scrolls. In fact, he can keep on making them, as he can even make a lot of money selling them. After realizing that he can just keep on writing in the book, the only troubling thing for Jia would be to have enough ink. As long as he has that, he can write scrolls to his heart's content. And even getting ink is not that difficult. He can just ask his friend to bring some more of that green herb extract. But this scroll that Jia has is still a mystery for him, as he still does not know what its effect is. The instruction says that it increases the destruction power of ruin magic, but it is still not making things clear for him to be certain about what it does. And since he is not a magician, it is not like he can just try it out either. So the only way he can check it out is by having some magician use it. Then we see the red-headed lady we saw earlier asking someone in front of her if he is the hunter named Jia. After the MC confirms that he indeed is that, the lady comes quickly forward saying that she finally met him. She has been looking for an opportunity to meet him for so long, and now finally she has that. Even though one would think that said should be relieved to finally have the opportunity. But more than relief, she seems to be just feeling frustration due to all the running around she had to do so far to get to this moment, as we see her put her hand on the counter really hard. Her frustration shows clearly when she says that Jia is someone who is very difficult to meet because of how many times she has to come here just to meet him. Jia feels like she is someone like Hyojin. Realizing her intense frustration, Jia apologizes and says that due to some personal circumstances the shop stays empty quite often. Then the lady's face shows relief, as she is now certain that this man is Hunter Jia. As the lady had already expected, he does not look like anything special. This is exactly how Cholhyun had described him to her. But Jia certainly feels like the lady is very scary, as he wonders why is she staring at him like that. It almost makes him think that she is still mad. Well, whatever, it's fine, because the lady's purpose of visiting here is not him. What she is more interested in are the items that he sells. And now, after what we already know about him having that infinite spell book, he will have plenty more interesting stuff to sell. The lady also realizes that it was really thoughtless of her to just be so frustrated at him, because he must have had his own circumstances which prevented him from being here often. Because everyone can have trouble in their life. However, she has no idea how easily this guy gets everything, so maybe showing a little bit of frustration isn't that bad. Then lady says sorry for the late introduction and tells Jia that she is the Eternal Flame Guild leader Cha Hwan. She also gives her card. She had heard that Jia sells spatial items in this general store, and since Jia does do that, he says yes. Jia realizes that she must be talking about the solar apple potions. Or maybe she is looking for the winter strawberry potion, because those are the items which are the most famous these days. Jia even quickly starts rummaging through items to find the ones he thinks that she needs. He is being extra helpful due to the fact that she had already visited several times in vain. So he would like to even give her some things on the house. This surprises the lady, as she did not thought that it was really something that easy to get, especially since this is not a market or something. But after doing all his rummaging, Jia's face gets really nervous as he tells his customer that he is really sorry because he is out of stock right now. This is certainly a really bad luck for the lady, because after coming here and returning in vain several times, now when she finally gets to meet Jia, she still has to go back in vain. So far in this world, Jia gets everything easily while others are struggling at every corner. Jia was very complacent, so he didn't really pay attention to his main job due to the incident with the terror drones or the infinite spell book. He feels really ashamed for even being the owner of this general store, especially when he had never run out of stock up until now. For now all he can do is just say to the lady that if she comes again tomorrow he will prepare all the items she would like to buy. Even though apologizing does not do anything, but now that is the only thing he can do, so he just keeps on apologizing again and again to the lady, who just cannot say anything because he is looking so regretful. Right now all of this is just making her think that maybe this guy is just too dumb. And it's not like she has any other choice, especially since he had already said that he is out of stock. So for now all she can do is just leave and come back again tomorrow. However, she really wanted to try those items in the dungeon later. But Jia still has something to ask of the lady before she leaves. Jia asks her that since she said that she was the guild leader of the Eternal Flame just now, so now he wants to know if she is a flame magician. To this she replies that yes, she is a flame magician. Now someone like that was exactly what Jia needed, so he quickly puts forth the scroll and gives her that. He tells her that this is a flame attribute scroll that he made yesterday as a sample. So for now he is giving this to her because it didn't feel right making her leave empty-handed. Seeing that Jia is himself giving that to her, she decides to not refuse it. While trying to use it a little bit, she reads the phrase, "Thy flame will set everything on fire." And this is a phrase she really likes a lot. I just hope she would not burn down the store of Jia. But fortunately she is a very good magician, so she would not do something so careless. Now she can leave with something really useful, and Jia tells her to take care while she is leaving. While the lady was leaving, Jia notices her staff and wonders if it originally shone like that or it has something to do with the scroll he just gave to her. Then in the spider dungeon, the sentinel spider has been defeated, so the ones who defeated the spider decide to move forward while maintaining camp. But suddenly something comes behind them. Whatever was behind them could do them no harm because one of them used some really strong fire magic to take it out. Then we see the one who saved them was the lady who got the scroll from Jia. After saving them, she says that they shall enter the center like this and asks everyone to get ready. Hearing her order, everyone says yes. The lady is feeling very strange because now it feels like her power is stronger than what it usually is. At first she thought that maybe it is just her thinking that. But after seeing how the ruined stone is also running rampant, she just cannot push this concern aside like nothing. Just when she was thinking about all this, suddenly someone calls out to her to watch out. She barely dodges some kind of purple goo. I'm also thankful that she dodged it, and also for the guy who warned her in time, otherwise it could have seriously did some scary things to her, as it looks like some dangerous poison. But the guild leader is alright, so no problem about that. But there are other concerns, as it looks like there are more of them than what was stated in their report. One of her follower apologizes as there are many variables in this forest-type dungeon in the first place. He also asks if they should retreat for now and reorganize. But their leader wants to keep on going no matter what. Her followers are worrying because they think that their guild leader may be overdoing it, but she asks them to not worry because somehow she feels like she can do anything in her current state. So she asks everyone to stand back unless they want to get swept up in this and get hurt. Then their leader uses a really powerful fire magic and burns every concerning monster that is trying to surround them. I'm pretty sure those monsters did not expect something like this happening to them today. Even the monsters are having a really difficult time surviving in this world. Everyone who witnessed her do this is really surprised by that. In fact, even the lady herself is surprised at the amount of power she was just able to utilize. The others ask her how much did she level up her skill because they feel like at this rate she would just sweep away the entire dungeon. After thinking a lot about this, the lady finally figures out what could be behind her powered up state. Her thoughts take her to the scroll which Jia gave her. Subscribe for more. As Jia had promised to Yon, the next day he prepared a case of the required potions, spending the entire night making it. He estimated the size of the order, trying to determine the right amount. He made some extra solar apple potions and winter strawberry potions, just in case someone else came to the store. Leaving the box on the table, Jia looked at the wall, where a clock was hanging, and the time was 7:30. The only thing left to do was to pack the goods before Yon came for the goods, for she had said she would come early in the morning. Jia knew that he should hurry due to this reason. After a while, the bell hanging on the door began to ring loudly, announcing a visitor. As it turned out, it was Cha-Yon. Seeing her, Jia happily informed that he had just prepared the potions she had requested yesterday. This time, however, Yon didn't come alone. Behind her stood a man in a business suit who was the alchemist and the secretary of Yon. She wanted to discuss about the potions and elixirs later. Instead, she wanted to talk about a more delicate topic. Jia knew there was no point in refusing her, but deep inside Jiha's heart, he was worried that this talk was about the scroll he had given to Yon yesterday. Fortunately, his fear did not come true, as in front of his face laid a large briefcase filled with a monstrous amount of money. Jiha didn't understand what was going on, so he sat on the chair in deep shock which reached his core, asking what it was. The guild leader calmly replied that it was plain old money while she looked at Jiha's reaction. She even assumed that he was the type of person who was obsessed with money and greedy enough to want more of the money even after she offered this much. Of course, that didn't explain why he was selling potions at such a low price. But it was completely opposite for Jiha. He got so nervous by the money offered to him, and by listening to the accusations made for him, he replied that everyone likes money, but he was just a little surprised when such a large sum was put on the table. After that, an awkward silence covered the atmosphere. In the complete silence, Yon's voice was the first to break out. She began to talk about the scroll that had unexpectedly fallen into her hands due to Jiha giving it to her. Its effects were unimaginable, and it was also rated for an A-class or even S-class item. She was grateful that she had gotten it for free from Jiha, but she couldn't just let this go without doing something. Jiha completely understood Yon's feelings. He expected the endless spell book to make excellent spells far exceeding the imaginations of normal people and hunters. Yon continued to talk and emphasized that if Jiha was uncomfortable in receiving such an amount in cash, she could easily have it transferred to his account. However, what Jiha said shocked Yon's mind on multiple levels. After expressing his gratitude, he flatly refused to accept the money because our boy Jiha had given the scroll as an apology for the long wait. He considered himself nothing but an ordinary person, so he couldn't accept Yon's money for his apology. He knew that no matter the outcome, she had gotten the scroll as an experimental item. Yon couldn't leave this situation unresolved and was now frustrated. She told Jiha that it would take a few seconds to turn a good person into a stupid person. The alchemist who had been standing next to her the whole time wanted to stop her, but she continued her speech. She gave the example of the goose that lays the golden eggs. She asked Jiha about what the people would do if the goose gave them the golden eggs for nothing. Jiha, thinking it was a reference of some sort, briefly replied that every single one of the people would be rich. Yon told him that everyone would immediately know about it, and many would even try to capture the goose, wanting to single-handedly own its riches. Of course, the fact that Jiha was on the side of the hunters was good news in itself, but at the same time it was no less dangerous. That was why Yon wanted to give him a rather pleasant and favorable offer. Her eyes instantly shone with fire as she offered Jiha to join the Eternal Flame Guild. This was quite an unexpected offer for Jiha, and it shocked him on many levels. It was something that was needed to be thought about properly. Chayon had said some bad things earlier to Jiha just because she was worried about him, but at the same time she wanted to attract him to her guild. There would be many people in this world who wanted to deceive him for their own gain, but she wanted to prevent that from happening and protect him. Besides, Yon brought a lot of money to prove that they could reward Jiha's extraordinary abilities properly. Eternal Flame was a guild known for its benefits, so Jiha replied that they didn't need to go that far to convince him. However, Yon still wanted to show to Jiha that such a famous guild would be able to take good care of him and can spoil him. To top it all off, the guild had many mages, and they also had alchemists as well. After patting the secretary on the shoulder, she introduced Chulhyun as their chief alchemist, who was supplying the guild with potions. The alchemist was making a finger heart in a goofy manner, while telling Jiha that he loved the Eternal Flame Guild. Besides him, there were other skillful alchemists there, and even to them, they provided plenty of opportunities for their experiments, so there were no restrictions on research for Jiha too. If Jiha did agree to join them, the guild would try to make his salary as close to what he wanted as they possibly can. Moreover, the alchemist would agree to let Jiha hold the position of the chief or even higher than that. Yon was trying her best to attract him to her, but our boy only thanked her for her sparkling words and agreed to accept them only as a sign of goodwill. Yon quickly commanded the alchemist to get the contract out as quickly as possible to sign the agreement, but he was frozen, as he was the first to realize what Jiha had said to the guild master few moments ago. Eventually Yon realized that her non-rejectable offer was now rejected by Jiha, so she was in deep shock at the rejection. She couldn't understand about why he didn't agree to what was offered. She was even willing to raise the terms of agreement and make the terms more generous for Jiha. But for him, even everything that was offered initially was too much. Jiha told Yon that he believed that there were more talented people that would be perfect for the position. Jiha was willing to sacrifice such an expensive place. After saying those words, Jiha stopped as he saw that Yon was literally boiling with anger and was ready to pounce onto him. The patient alchemist was the only one who was holding her and her impulse to fight and trying to resolve the situation. However, Cha-Yon was not going to stop and shouted at the top of her voice, asking Jiha to stop humiliating himself. She only managed to keep quiet and calm down when he spoke, that he was originally a low-ranked hunter and had no powers whatsoever. He was able to create these potions not because of his skills, but only because he was lucky enough to find good friends and take their help. Jiha was sure that one day his abilities might disappear, so he wasn't sure if he could do great things for a long time. In addition to that, Jiha had become very attached to his little store. Of course, Cha-Yon didn't want to miss out on such a potential hunter like Jiha, but the alchemist-cum-secretary stopped her because he knew that it would be quite difficult for them to change Jiha's mind on this matter, so he wanted Yon to stop then and there and show respect to Jiha's wishes. Jiha was glad that the two people backed off. But to keep their morale up, he replied that he wouldn't forget their advice for the rest of his life and would be extremely careful from now on. He promised Yon that he would raise the price of the potion she had asked for yesterday, so now they had to be careful with him. Watching this cute situation, Cha-Yon only laughed as she can't do anything else. She thought that anyone in the store would have thought that she was pushing him to do bad things. However, she was still a bit disappointed to hear the rejection from Jiha, but there was nothing she could do about it. Yon warned Jiha not to be afraid to ask for help if he found himself in a dangerous situation later on. Smiling at her warning, Jiha told her not to worry about him because if something like this happened, he had something that would warn him. Jiha then pointed to a plant in a pot that literally looked like a bell. It was named the humming bell, which made a sound when a worker was in danger. Ever since the gates appeared, humans could no longer spend time in nature because both the sea and the beach have been taken over by the ferocious monsters. They were even inside the mountains and valleys, and they managed to adapt quickly. So it was quite difficult to find a place free of them. But thanks to the Forest of Dreams, Jiha managed to avoid encountering the horrible creatures, resting there whenever he wanted to. He was strolling along the sandy beach as he finally had the opportunity to sincerely enjoy nature. As expected, the sea was best for relieving headaches. Originally, Jiha thought that there would only be a forest at the place, but after walking not too far, even the sea appeared. Now this place looked more like paradise on earth. That day, Jiha wanted to focus on the general store, but after Cha-Yon came to his shop and the incident took place, he became exhausted. After that, he felt like he had been disqualified from his right to be the owner of his own general store for a while and went into the forest. Jiha was determined that no matter whatever it was, he just wanted to be happy and heal himself that day till the evening. Jiha decided that he will just eat and read a lot of books that day and to spoil himself a little. Working with people took too much energy, so Jiha was exhausted from dealing with customers. He spent the whole day in the silence of the Forest of Dreams. He burnt a campfire and sat in front of it, while reading multiple books and enjoying them. But there was one minor detail that he had completely forgotten about. It was that at any time or anywhere unexpected guests keep following him along, and he was never able to be alone. Even now, while doing his business, a small snow-white cat with gray spots that looked a little like a snow leopard cub suddenly came to him. The scene shifts to 2 hours ago, and we see that Jiha was enjoying a red book after watching the beautiful sunset that shimmered on the waves of the raging sea. Jiha had built a small fire beforehand, which illuminated the stone cave with its orange flame, creating a perfect light for reading books. It was extremely peaceful in this small shelter. Jiha knew that no one had a problem listening to the sounds of the sea waves crashing with each other, but now it was occupied by monsters and were not available to be enjoyed by humans anymore. Therefore, Jiha thought that he was extremely lucky to be able to enjoy the sound of the waves. He delightfully said that if only he had the chance to bring Sungho Hyung or Sunyung here, he would do it in an instant. However, Jiha's train of thoughts stopped when strange sounds began to come from the other end of the cave. After listening to them, Jiha realized that they sounded like a cat meowing, but he was baffled by the presence of a cat in that place. Jiha took a small fire stick for lighting his path well enough. Getting closer and closer to the sound, Jiha wondered if the sound is of a lion or a tiger, because it seemed different from a cat sound. Jiha arrived at the entrance and leaned toward the humming bell plants, but they were as quiet as they can and did not make a single sound, which meant that the beast roaming nearby was not dangerous to Jiha. Suddenly, he looked above his head and saw a pterodrone flying over his head. It startled Jiha, and he decided to rush to where the pterodrone was going. As he ran closer and closer, he began to hear the sounds of the animal howling more and more clearly. Finally, Jiha found a white cat monster with black spots onto its fur. It was possible only because he followed the pterodrone to where it was going. The system identified the animal as Actus, and it was obvious to Jiha from looking at it that this creature was larger than a normal cat. Jiha took him in his arms, as it was not in the best shape and was lying on the ground shivering. Jiha thought to help the Actus by giving him a potion. But suddenly a pterodrone poked Jiha with its cute claw, trying to draw his attention to himself. Turning around at his call, Jiha started to apologize for being distracted and forgetting about him. But he reached Cloud 9 when he saw that several pterodrones brought fish that they had caught for the cat and were dragging them on their own straight from the sea itself. Jiha was amazed to see their care for the Actus cat. He praised them for their hard work for helping the cat and scratched one of the pterodrone's head. Jiha promised them that he would bring more delicious food the next time he comes to the forest, and just like that we come back to the present. We see that Jiha had fed the cat, the fist and the potions which he promised. Jiha was able to breathe a sigh of relief from knowing that the potion was working well on the cat, and he was happy that he gave a try to the potions. Actus was shivering like crazy till recently, but judging from how it was sleeping, Jiha guessed that everything was fine now. However, a funny thought struck Jiha's mind that although he had not yet had the opportunity to fully explore the Forest of Dreams, this was the first time he had met an animal here. Stroking the soft fur of the Actus cat, he became increasingly curious about where this little friend came from. But at the same moment when his hand reached Actus's head, it suddenly opened its blue eyes and stared at him, while making a sound which resembled a meow. Jiha did not want to wake the Actus up and only out of habit began to stroke his fur. Thinking that the Actus might feel uneasy, Jiha instantly removed his palm and began to apologize. But as it turned out, that Actus woke up for a completely different reason which surprised Jiha to the core. Just like a little kitten, the beast began to purr at Jiha's hand, twisting his flexible body in different directions. It was happy by all the stroking done by Jiha and cuddled even more. Jiha was mesmerized by this immense cuteness and felt like he was the chosen one for the Actus cat. After calming down and coming out from his dream of dancing and being happy by the cat's cuteness, Jiha began to ponder over the name he should give the cat. Even when the creature was already called as Actus, it was just a species name and did not sound cute at all. After looking at the Actus skin, which was similar to a white tiger, Jiha decided to name it Bam. Looking cutely at Bam, Jiha offered him to stay with him if the creature had nowhere else to go to. Bam meowed softly in agreement to Jiha, thus becoming his pet. After this achievement, Jiha returned to the shop once again. As the scene shifts, we see that a girl was head over heels after looking at the cuteness of Bam the cat. We see that Jiha was bewildered by how more and more people wanting to see Bam cuteness as it sat onto its master's lap. Jiha was okay with it because it brought the general store a huge income in return. Many people guessed that Bam was a snow leopard and asked Jiha about the location he got the cat from. Jiha told the customers that he found Bam in a dungeon and took it for himself as it seemed like the cat had nowhere else to go. We get a look at the yawning cat, which mesmerized the group of people in the shop. One of the lady customers naturally wanted to pet the cat, so she thoughtfully asked Jiha if she can do so. However, Bam himself was against this idea, and as soon as the stranger's palm approached him, he immediately struck it with his claws and injured it. Jiha became very nervous and asked the lady if she was all right. Luckily, she told Jiha that she was fine, but the lady's heart was now shattered in pieces. Jiha explained to the lady that Bam was just shy, and as he stroked its head, he asked Bam to not attack customers from now on. Jiha realized that Bam was kind only to him, and to the others were treated like mere trash by him. If he continued to treat people like that, then keeping Bam in the store would not be a good idea for Jiha. However, he couldn't leave Bam at home so easily, and besides, Jiha still wanted to show off the cuteness of his new cat friend. After the incident, most of the customers took their orders and went back to their busy life. But instead of them, Seo Hyejin came to Jiha's shop, holding a coffee stand in her hand. Jiha welcomed the sword witch, and she replied that as she had business to attend to, she stopped by the store and grabbed some coffee. She asked Jiha if he liked coffee, but just then, she noticed the quiet meow of the white cat that was sitting on the counter. She instantly grabbed a coat rack and began shivering to the core while trying to protect herself from Bam. She asked Jiha about what kind of animal it was that was sitting next to him. Jiha calmly told Hyejin that it was Bam and introduced it as a small tiger. Hearing that, the sword witch trembled behind the wood, moving further away from the cat. Jiha was surprised to know that even Hyejin was scared of something. Hyejin finally walked towards Jiha carefully and gave him the coffee she brought on the way. Jiha was happy by this kind gesture of the lady, but Bam suddenly stood up and started coming towards Hyejin. Seeing that, she immediately jumped back, asking Jiha with a trembling voice to call the tiger back to him and to tell it to stay away from her. Hearing that, Jiha apologized because Bam was now living with him from then on and would be coming to the potion shop every day. Jiha exclaimed to Hyejin that he had any idea that she would be afraid of a little cat. He called Bam and told it to get down from the counter and get to the floor. But instead of that, Jiha saw that Bam sat back down on the counter. It turned out that Bam wanted Hyejin to pet him. Even the lady was surprised that the cat wanted her to pet it. She walked over to the counter and slowly tried to reach the cat's head by her hands. She finally touched Bam, and the cat smiled as it was getting cute pats from the lady's fingertips, which felt like a relaxing massage. Hyejin was happy and complimented the tiger for being so gentle and soft. Playing with the cat distracted Hyejin from the reason she came at the shop. She told Jiha that due to the buff scroll he gave to Yon for free, that Hunter Net was getting more and more violent, causing an uproar. Jiha replied that the leader of the Eternal Flame even came back after the incident. While petting Bam, Hyejin was not able to comprehend about how Jiha can give Yon a scroll that was worth at least a few hundred millions at least, if not more. Hyejin wondered if Jiha was either not an ambitious person or was simply dull. But she was sure that Jiha was just the kind of person who didn't calculate anything and wasn't greedy. He was just someone that makes others around him comfortable. Perhaps that was the reason why Hyejin herself started coming to his general store so often. Hyejin's complimental thoughts for Jiha stopped suddenly, as the humming bell plants started making loud noises all of a sudden. Jiha and Bam were surprised for once after hearing the plant making noise. He immediately realized that it could only mean one thing. The plant's noise was a warning of the danger that could threaten Jiha's life. Just after a few moments, all the loudspeakers began to announce the occurrence of a Type 4 catastrophe, asking all residents living nearby to urgently evacuate the area. The loudspeakers made it clear that this was not a drill, and after hearing that, Hyejin shouted at Jiha and told him to leave the store immediately. Jiha was now in utter confusion, not able to comprehend about what he should do. Jiha had to leave the building immediately, running away with Bam into his arms. The hunters have arrived, and the armed forces are coordinating with them to lead the people to the evacuation site, also guide them and giving directions to them. Young and old, women and children, anyone who can be affected by the upcoming disaster was being quickly transported to a safer place, and that included Jiha and the little Bayam. If it's a Type 4 warning, Jiha knew that they must be facing the catastrophe of a Category 4 dungeon. If that's the case, there would be quite a lot of strong hunters in the area. Jiha can only hope that they will be enough to stop the incoming danger. Bayam senses that something is wrong and was feeling anxious in the middle of the crowded evacuation area, while Jiha tries to comfort the little Actus cat as much as he can. Everything was going on smoothly until the ground starts shaking wildly and everyone in the designated area feels the quake. Chaos and fear immediately take hold of everyone in an instant. When the shaking subsides, Jiha wondered with a worried face if it is still too early for the people to feel reassured. Even Bayam was visibly upset by all the strange things happening around him and was almost crying with his teary eyes looking way too cute. Jiha was also moving like a real cat lover and was trying his best to comfort his little Bayam. He continues to reassure himself along with his cat that the ground shake was probably nothing and that they will be just fine. In this world, a catastrophe is not something usual. It occurred as a result of a crisis when the hunters entering the dungeon failed to complete their quest. There won't be any major problem with catastrophes of a low difficulty dungeon, as those are easy to contain and deal with, but there are rare cases of high-level dungeons like this one that go down a lot differently. This level of damage happens when a rank 4 or higher dungeon suffers a catastrophe. In the event of a failure this massive, civilians within the radius of 20 kilometers of the gate are to be evacuated, and every armed force that could spare manpower carries out military operations while deploying their finest armored forces, including the high-ranking hunters. They were the most well-informed and well-equipped against matters concerning dungeons. The Sword Witch Isio Hyojin along with the Guild Master and everyone else were on standby. As everyone was feeling uneasy from the dark and gloomy atmosphere caused by the catastrophe. The dungeon gate, which looked like a dimensional rift, slowly started cracking and making weird sound, indicating that the rift was growing unstable by the second. Finally, the first wave of the monsters breaking free to wreak havoc and spread the catastrophe has broken through to the human world. It seems like this time the enemies would be skeleton warriors brought back from the dead. Humanity's first line of defense opens fire with heavy artillery from the military forces. Semi-automatic, anything that fires and fires a lot, rains down lead on the monsters trying to encroach on the human world. Next come the targeted airstrikes being dropped from up in the sky. Fighter jets and their highly trained pilots rain down explosives to pinpoint and wipe out the incoming horde of skeletons in an open area. These skeleton monsters are also known as leeches. If these are the type of monsters that triggered the catastrophe, then the undead dungeon attack must have failed. Goryeo Group's successor Kim Hyung-suk remains confident that even against these liches, their firepower would be enough to end it soon. He is already thinking of how to get away right after finishing up the remnants. Kim turns to one of the commanding military officers and suggests a focus fire on the gate itself to blow it up. The hunters will deal with the monsters that slip through the cracks and the liches who use curses. Kim was quite certain that this operation was an inevitable success, if and only if there would be no other variable popping up all of a sudden. Suddenly, a gigantic and uneasy creature emerged from the gate, with its red eyes and disgusting mouth. It is starting to look like the worst is yet to come. Kim identifies this gruesome creature who coming out of the gate as a monstrous being. He immediately alerts all forces to up the urgency and focus their entire firepower on the bastard that has just emerged from the fractured dungeon gate. Next comes the green light for open fire, an all-out attack that will pour out everything that human technology is capable of given the circumstance. Hellfire of explosives coming from the skies and the ground rains down on the monstrous being, but it's looking like it is not faltering with its advance at all. It even taunts the military forces by catching one of the missiles right out of the air and putting the damn thing in its mouth. The booming sound and the scorched earth explosion that result from the combination of everything that the military has are destructive to the highest degree. The foot soldiers see this and start celebrating their successful defense against the monstrous being. It looks like their focused firepower was quite effective at first glance. But Kim knows that a monstrous being is a disaster-ranked creature. This much attack, no matter how impressive or destructive it is, won't even leave a scratch on it. As the smoke, dust, and debris settle, what emerges is the unscathed, hideous giant with a permanent mocking smile on its ugly face. It is capable of almost human thought, and in its demented head, it just keeps repeating that there are enemies, dangerous enemies. And when there are dangerous enemies, it must kill. The monstrous being literally tanks every explosive and high-caliber bullet thrown at, and it is now ready to take the initiative for its own attack. Kim notices that the monster is angling their way and orders the armed forces to dodge the incoming charge. Everyone has not gotten out of the way yet, but it seems like that won't be a problem. The massive undead monster just passes them by without attacking at all. That bastard's goal is not the attacking military units in the front lines. It is so much worse than that. It is the spherical evacuation center at the heart of the city. The monstrous being is blowing by every single enemy in sight, and is only focused on the area where most of the people in the city have gathered. In this fast-paced battle, the high-ranking hunters have not gotten the chance to show off what they are capable of. They refuse to let this ugly bastard rush into the evacuation shelter without a fight. The attacking effort is being led by the Sword Witch herself. She comes from a high angle with her magical blades lined up for a sharp attack. She then executes her special move, the technique that ripped a manstalker into shreds, her powerful sword rampage. The assault of the high-ranking hunters is not done yet. Eternal Flame Guild Master Cha-Yon also wants a piece of the monster to kill, as she orders everyone to stand back while she fires off one of her specialties. Using her runic wand, she fires off a scorching fireball that is more destructive than man-made bombs. Even after this brutal assault of special moves, the monstrous being was still feeling no pain at all. It still remains unshaked. Seeing this was like to rub salt on the guild leader and the Sword Witch's wounded egos. The monster does not even bother turning back to face them, as if they did not even catch the creature's eyes. At last, the monstrous being has come close enough to the evacuation shelter and lifts its fist up to gather whatever mysterious energy that makes the undead so strong. In one punch, it tears a massive hole through the most secure and reinforced building in the city. This sphere was supposed to be a haven where people could expect to be safe from anything. The Sword Witch immediately rushes in to go back into the action and save the people, even when Cha-Yon warned her that getting close to the monster would be dangerous. She just cannot stand around and watch as people and most importantly, Jiha inside the shelter die. Jiha is in there with the people. The monstrous being looks at the people with its gruesome and undead body in the hole that it made, while the thought of finally finding the enemy continuously repeats inside its thick head. We come to know that the monster ignored all the attacks and all the forces outside the sphere to look for Jiha and Bam. Now that the shelter has been breached, and it was a fact that nowhere was a safe place now, even the outside was not looking good at all. Jiha knows that the reasonable thing to do was to run away, but the fear has trapped his legs into the floor and they won't move at all. He begs and begs for his trembling legs to move to no avail. After a while, his lower body finally gains enough strength to take a step back, but it might just be too late. The monstrous being has already reached out its hand to pick him up. In its mind, it's starting to feel confused as this man up front is not the strong enemy that it has set out to look for. Bam looked as though he was just an anxious and adorable household cat earlier, but the little guy is now breathing intensely with not a hint of fear in those beady eyes. This little Actus cat launches an attack of concentrated force right into the monster's palm that was wanting to grab both of them so badly in a tight grip. Bam has stopped the immediate danger, and he is not stopping now. The Actus jumps out of Jiha's protection and faces the monstrous being directly. Bam then starts talking to the monstrous being telepathically, calling it a lowly demonic being. After hearing the dominating voice of the wannabe cat inside its head, the monster that rendered every human force useless loses its ugly smile and starts sweating nervously. Bayam continues to speak directly inside the undead's head while roaring with all his might. For a brief moment, the form of a fully grown Actus appears like a terrifyingly ferocious leopard. It invokes a primal fear inside the monstrous being's mind, causing it to stop moving altogether. Even on the outside, the sword witch also feels that an enormous amount of ether that just got unleashed from the inside of the shelter. No matter what it was, it has given the high-ranking hunters another chance to defeat the monstrous being, who was just standing there frozen like ice. Eternal Flame Guild leader Cha Yon already knows what the sword witch needs before she can even ask for help. Yon fires a nourishing flame directly onto the sword witch's blade, and it looks as Hyojin's weapon has absorbed the guild leader's destructive potential. With that boost in strength and fire attribute, Hyojin's and Yon's combo attack rages on as the fire sword became rampant. This time, the monster cannot just ignore the pain or remain unscathed. The combined force of two top rankers was impossible to contend with when you are under the primal fear of Bayam's mysterious and strong might. That single series of attacks almost takes everything that the sword witch has in her. Yon walks forward to confirm if the mission was really over, and Hyojin replies that they cannot let their guard down yet. Especially against whatever it is that released an enormous amount of ether inside the evacuation shelter. Upon entering through the massive opening that the monster made onto the wall, the only ones that the ladies see were Jiha and Bayam. It is just the gentle store manager and his adorable pet cat that can secretly dominate a disaster-level threat with no problems. The monster was defeated, and watching the others deal with the aftermath of the attack, Yon was surprised to note that she no longer felt the ether. Remembering what had happened, she couldn't help but wonder what it was all about and what she had felt at the time. Finally getting home and taking a shower, Jiha could finally relax. With a sigh of relief, he noted that today had been a really crazy day. Fortunately, however, everything had turned out great in the end. As soon as he sat down on the chair, Bayam immediately jumped into his lap. He started rubbing against him, begging to be petted. Unable to resist this temptation, our boy Jiha began to caress him and praised Bayam for a job well done. As it was only because of Bayam that Jiha was alive now. Jiha also noted that when they had encountered the monster, Bayam had seemed very angry. However, there was no trace of that anger now anywhere around him. While Jiha was thinking about the monster, an interesting thought suddenly popped into his head, which he immediately decided to write in an endless book of spells. But it's going to surprise the whole world. While Jiha was writing something in the book, new information appeared out of nowhere on the screen of someone's laptop about the recently defeated monster, which appeared from the gate of Level 4 Catastrophe and almost destroyed the hideout. That laptop belonged to none other than Kim. Seeing the information that appeared on the website, he was very surprised. The website said that the newly appeared monster was 15 meters tall and ugly, but it had tremendous strength. But that was not what surprised Kim, but it was the fact that he couldn't believe that the information on the website had been updated, which website never ever updates itself. At the same time, Jiha finished writing and closed the book. Humming a cheerful tune, he said that what he had written should have been enough. Kim wondered about how it was possible to add something on the kind of site where no one could edit anything. After a while, the three largest hunter guilds met to discuss the past incident. They all knew that the monster had been killed by the Ether airwave, but it wasn't their hunters who did it. However, if the Ether had not exploded, there was no telling if they would have been able to stop the monster in time. Everyone only had one question: who did it? Everyone excitedly began to discuss and offer their options. Some said that it was a simple phenomenon, while others said that not everyone in the sphere dome had felt the etheric blast. Some suggested to investigate the dome to find the reason. After hearing all the speculations, Kim asked them if they had seen the update on Merwiki. Without waiting for an answer, he continued by saying that someone had the power to not only scare the monster, but also to add that information to a site that no one could edit ever before. Hearing this, SEO Hyojin said that only two assumptions could be made from this. Either the person who chased away the monster was in the dome, or someone had a unique ability that was different from that of ordinary hunters. Cha Yon immediately intervened in the conversation. She said that the people who were in the shelter said that they heard a cat roar when the explosion occurred. Hearing this, Kim said that this piece of information could not help them. However, Yon went on with what she was saying and told them that strange shopkeeper, Jiha, was also there. Furthermore, he had a cat that looked a lot like a snow leopard. From what they heard, everyone present in the hall was shocked. After a while, Jiha was standing behind his store as usual when he heard that someone had come to his general store. He greeted them with a smile as usual. However, when he took a closer look, he realized that the visitors this time were not ordinary. They were none other than the 3 heads of the largest guilds who were in front of him. Jiha was a little frightened when he saw them walking towards him with determination. Not understanding about why 3 of such important people had come to him at once, he worriedly asked them about what had happened. However, it was much simpler than he had imagined. All the 3 of them wanted was to see his cat Bam. Jiha wanted to add that Bam would get scared and run away if they made so much noise, but just in the next moment, a rustling sound was heard by Jiha and the others, causing everyone to look over the counter. As it turned out, it was Bam who, to everyone's surprise, jumped onto the counter like an ordinary cat. He yawned sweetly and stretched in front of them. All 3 guild heads immediately rushed over to him, trying to see if he was the one who had caused the ether to explode. Bam looked at the guests and meowed in bewilderment, as if asking about what they wanted from him. Yon decided to take a closer look at the cat and picked him up and wondered if he was the one who had caused the ether airwave, because at first glance, Bam seemed to be an ordinary cat. Jiha immediately panicked and told Yon to let him go as he didn't like being held like that. However, she didn't pay attention to Jiha's warnings and turned to the others. She told them that she didn't feel the presence of ether in the cat at all. She was sure that if that cat had been the culprit of the explosion, she would have at least sensed something at all, but it was nothing. Bam didn't particularly like being held into a stranger's arms, so he tried to pull away from Yon. Realizing that the girl was not going to let him go, he immediately sank his sharp fangs into her hand, causing her to cry out painfully. Bam jumped out of the girl's hands and jumped back onto the counter. Jiha told the irritated Yon to be careful, as Bam had a bad temper and could bite anyone if he does not like it. At the same time, Hyejin intervened and said that she heard that he was at the shelter during the incident with the monster. She added that she heard that someone heard a cat roaring angrily right before the monster escaped. Hearing this, Jiha smiled awkwardly. Fixing his points, Kim thoughtfully replied that that was indeed the case. Even though he agreed with it, he still had his doubts. However, when he saw the cat trying to jump on his master's head, he realized that their suspicions were false. There was no way that he could believe that there was a cat in front of him who could stop such a strong monster. But it didn't matter because if he could, he would try to hire the store clerk right now. It would not be the right time. Even though Cha Yon had already been rejected by Jiha and Bam once, it was clear that she wasn't going to give up, and Kim had no desire to compete with her. Deciding to put that idea off until a better time, he turned around and headed for the exit. He told Jiha that he would see him again. Cha Yon immediately followed him, saying that she wanted to see Kim rejected by the cat and Jiha too. Meanwhile, Hyejin smiled brightly before going back. She promised to come back again to Jiha soon, and replied that she could come back any time. That night, Jiha lay on a lounge chair by the fire inside the mysterious forest and was reading a book as he came across some information about the Gehenna continent. He had already heard about it somewhere, so he immediately started reading with interest. According to the information in the book, Gehenna continent was a place where many different people lived together with the great tree. The tree created nature gods to protect the continent. After reading this, Jiha was very surprised. We also see the picture of Bam inside the book. As Jiha continued reading, he came across a description of one of the nature gods who had white fur with dark spots and was called the nature's raging fangs. Jiha was suddenly shocked to the core by this revelation. The description of the creature he had just read about matched the cute little Bam's image exactly. Bam looked at his pet who was sleeping peacefully on his lap and wondered if Bam was really a nature god. The realization that this might be true made him jump up of the chair all of a sudden, making Bam fall from his lap. Even though the little cat didn't look like a nature god, the things that had happened around him during the monster accident hinted that it could very well be true. Jiha realized that none of this could be a coincidence because even the guild leaders had already mentioned that there had been a large, etheric explosion in the shelter back then. And after comparing all the facts, our hero came to the conclusion that it was most likely the work of Bam and his mysterious powers. Looking at the little Actus cat, which was lying on his lap, Jiha wondered if he could consider it a nature god. After all, if that was really the case, then the tree from his dream could also be the real-world tree. When he thought about it, he realized that it all really did make sense. Jiha suddenly had a feeling that from the beginning, it was as if the tree had given him a job, and that it all started from the moment he received the worker class, helping the Pterodrones and then saving Bam. It was like it was all the part of some grand plan. While Jiha was thinking about all this, a light suddenly began to emanate from the book he had placed next to him. In the next instant, the book opened by itself and a bright light poured out from its pages. Such an unexpected phenomenon surprised Jiha to the core. Suddenly, a system window popped up in front of him. The first thing that caught Jiha's eye was that his class was called XXXX's worker. He was not able to understand what was happening, but the book's light suddenly became blinding and Jiha covered his eyes from his hands. As the scene shifts, we see that Huang was watching the news where it is said that the undead were spreading an infestation that was greatly reducing the area available for crops, which led to food shortages, and the only way to solve this was to defeat the undead. Huang turned off the TV without listening to the experts' opinions as she wrapped herself in a blanket, and said thoughtfully that hunting the lick was not that easy. We go back to the Forest of Dreams where Jiha opened his eyes and found himself standing in front of the World Tree. He turned to it and said that it had been guiding him all along onto his journey, and it was the tree that had led him to the Forest of Dreams. Smiling slightly, he added that he didn't know why the World Tree had given him such an important task. However, even so, he believed that there must have been some reason for it. That was why Jiha promised that he would do his best to help the tree. Suddenly, a magical portal appeared behind him as it was glowing with a purplish aura. Turning around to look at it, Jiha looked at it with bewilderment, watching the portal with interest, from which something was clearly going to appear. Jiha wondered about what it could be. The very next moment, a cold and gloomy voice was heard by Jiha. It was none other than Elder Lick, the leader of the liches, who began to shout all sorts of terrifying curses. Looking at the place where the portal had been opened, Jiha saw a skeleton with a staff in his hands who continued to shout furiously. However, this wasn't just any skeleton, but the elder itself. In addition to that, he was not alone, but was in charge of a huge army of undead that obeyed his orders without any questions. According to the information that Jiha knew, the senior Lick was considered a dread-grade monster, and even the strongest guilds wouldn't want to face him and his army. However, right now Jiha was not able to comprehend about how cute they were looking rather than being dangerous. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of Jiha, informing him that the Elder Lick and his army were infecting the nearest lands, and they were soon to reach Jiha's land as well. The system asked Jiha if he wanted to know a few ways from which he could reduce the Elder Lick's influence. Jiha agreed without a second thought, as he was happily ready to fulfill his duty. The Elder Lick along with his army continued to shout curses towards all living beings, as all they ever wanted was death to all living things. On the other hand, while watching them, Jiha noticed that they were actually quite cute. Their attempts to appear scary and evil seemed very amusing to him. He realized that it would be easier for him to intervene using the ether. He wondered if the work would be even easier if he could just swat them away like he did with the ants. However, he quickly realized that he couldn't do that because this was a lick. Liches were known to be immortal until their life source was destroyed, so this time Jiha would not be able to deal with him so easily. Fortunately, the system informed him that in order to reduce the influence of the lick, he had to first destroy its life source. After that, the only thing left to do was to clear out the surrounding areas. Looking more closely at a distance, Jiha could see a castle, which was visible to him. Although only ruins remained of it, Jiha could say with certainty that he had already seen it somewhere. Suddenly, he saw a flag torn and tattered into pieces. Jiha immediately remembered that it was the flag of the kingdom of Estram. And since it was destroyed and Lik had a large army of undead, Jiha understood that the people of the kingdom of Estram could just be the undead, who were now ruled by the Lik. However, it didn't matter now as there was nothing that Jiha could do to help them. All he had to concentrate on was victory against the undead. There was no way Jiha could let the infection spread any further. Even though he couldn't intervene directly, that wasn't a problem. He still had his army of Pterodrones who followed his orders happily without questioning, and they were determined to win this battle. But Jiha noticed that there was a small problem in front of them. The system reported to Jiha that a large rock was blocking the Pterodrone army's path, preventing it from moving forward. Even though the rock seemed tiny to Jiha, it was a huge problem for Pterodrones, and only one warrior could fly and cross it. Jiha knew that he can't leave the army to deal with it. So in the next instant, the Pterodrone army was looking at Jiha cutely as he had already thrown the rocks out of their way. As soon as the path was clear, they immediately rushed into battle. Their task was to find and destroy the Elder Lik's life source. But before they could do that, they needed to break through the undead army. In the next instant, the two armies clashed in a fierce battle, but it didn't last long, as the Pterodrones didn't leave a chance to make them kneel down and finally defeated the undead army almost instantly. Jiha was delighted to see that the Pterodrones had become much stronger from the previous fight they did, and now they looked more like a real army. Although the Pterodrones were doing well and had managed to kill a large number of undead, their advantage could disappear at any moment. Lik can still summon a lot of undead. In the next moment, the Pterodrones faced the undead reinforcements. However, that was not all. Raising his staff up, the Elder Lik began to cast some kind of terrifying spell. He instantly subjected the Pterodrones to a curse that caused them to begin to feel pain. Taking advantage of the fact that they were unable to fight, the Lik ordered his army to attack. However, he suddenly encountered a problem. It was the commander of the Pterodrones' army, who for some reason was not affected by the curse, and judging from his evil gaze, the elder knew that the commander was determined. The reason why the negative effects didn't work on him was because Jiha had applied the worker's blessing onto him, which did its job perfectly. In the next instant, the Lik's staff was in the air, and the elder was left without any weapons. He was cornered by the army. He tried to resist and shouted curses, but it didn't help him. The Pterodrones quickly grabbed him by his limbs and pinned him to the ground, but that was not the end of it for the Lik. The elder was immediately free from his limbs and then his entire body. He mockingly called the Pterodrones as idiots, saying that there was no point in destroying him because he could be resurrected at any moment. However, in the next second, he realized that he was very not that invincible because, during the battle, the Pterodrone had managed to find his life source. Suddenly, a system notification appeared in front of Jiha, informing him that in order to destroy the source, he needed to evolve his Pterodrone warrior. The cost of evolution was 5 points of essence. Even when it was expensive, Jiha had no choice but to do it. As soon as he pressed the button, the Pterodrone leader transformed from an ordinary warrior to a knight. He immediately rushed towards the castle at full speed, breaking through the wall. He broke into the room where the chest with the life source of Lik was. The Lik was desperately trying to recover because he realized that if he did nothing he would die an instant death. But no matter what he did, he had no chance. In the next instant, the Pterodrone knight destroyed the chest, and the Elder Lik immediately howled in pain, realizing that this was the end of him. With painful screams, the Elder and his army immediately began to disappear. Jiha was watching everything with a happy smile as his enemies dissolved into thin air. All he could say is that they had managed to win the battle. In addition to the victory, the Pterodrones got a lot of valuable trophies that they brought to Jiha. Seeing this, he immediately praised and thanked them. His praise immediately caused a wave of happy faces with smiles and blushes to most of the army. But the surprises did not end there. Suddenly, the Pterodrone Knight brought a large chest towards Jiha, and in an instant, it became even bigger. Looking inside, Jiha was pleasantly surprised at what he saw. Inside the chest was a blade that seemed very valuable at first glance. The description said that it was called the Royal Seal of the Estrom Kingdom. It had a unique class and added 5 points to mental health as well as a trait called Conqueror's Charisma. After reading this, Jiha's first thought was to find the owner of the sword in the Estrom Kingdom. However, after a little thought, he realized that most likely he had died long ago. So Jiha put the blade in his backpack and said that he would take care of it later. Right now, he still had to fulfill the second condition to reduce the status of the lick's influence. That was to clean up the infected land of the vicinity. Together with an army of pterodrones, Jiha immediately began to pour the tainted earth into a basin. Jiha was delighted to know that the land has been cleansed as he had intended. Suddenly, the Pterodrone Knight flew up to him, holding ink in his paws. Jiha was a little surprised and asked if he wanted him to write the scroll. He told the knight that he couldn't write it without the runes, but the runes appeared out of nowhere on the tree at that exact time and left him no choice. After a while, Jiha finished writing a scroll of purification which was supposed to restore the infected land to its original state. But even though he had made the scroll, he still had questions about how to use it. But suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by Bayam, jumping on top of him. The pet was trying to show him that he wanted his attention after a long time. While our boy Jiha was cat-sitting Bayam and telling him to be careful from the infection, the Pterodrone's Knight decided to take matters into his own hands. He immediately tore out the page with the inscriptions and was now happy. After a while, Jiha was finally finished playing with Bayam. But he was surprised that it was very quiet. He looked around just to see that there was no sign of any pterodrones. He wondered about where they had gone. Somewhere in the mountains, terrifying curses began to be heard again, as some lick had once again raised an army of undead from their graves and began to create havoc. The people at the mountain temple could not understand about what was going on and why they were hearing strange voices. However, they soon realized that they had encountered nothing but a monster of a dread level. Surrounded by an army of undead, another elder lick began to infect and destroy everything in its path. He would have continued to wreak havoc had it not been for the portal that suddenly appeared behind him. In the next instant, the lick was confronted with a truly terrifying foe. It was none other than Jiha's Pterodrone Knight, who stood before him at full height. He was not only huge in size, but was also very angry. Realizing that there would be no agreement, the lick immediately ordered his warriors to attack and destroy this cursed race of the World Tree to stop them at all costs. But it didn't work out at all because it only took one blow to destroy half of his army. The lick was cunning, and while the enemy was distracted by his warriors, he managed to cast a spell. As soon as the spell was finished, a curse fell onto the Pterodrone Knight. However, as it turned out, it was of no use. The Pterodrone looked at the lick with a mocking gaze, as if to say that techniques of that level did not work on him. The lick was scared to death and shocked, as he didn't understand about why his curse had no effect on the vile creature. But he had bigger problems to deal with. Namely, the huge army of pterodrones that had suddenly appeared from the portal. They were clearly determined to turn the elder lick and his army into dust. As the scene shifts, Jiha was standing behind the counter of his store as usual. As long as there were no visitors, he could afford to rub Bayam's fur. However, their pastime was disturbed by a visitor who entered the store. It was Huang, who headed towards him in a hurry. After approaching the counter and grabbing the remote, she immediately turned on the TV. Immediately, the voice of the anchor came on and said that they had breaking news. The reporter who had arrived on the scene excitedly reported that there were signs of battle in the areas where the lick had been. In addition to that, the infested lands had also been cleared. The officials also commented on this, saying that it could only mean that all the lick had been destroyed. Listening to the news, Jiha couldn't help but wonder what had happened. However, in the next instant, the reporter said that they had managed to capture a previously unknown creature at the scene. According to the experts, it could have been disaster level or even destruction level 1. However, no more information could be obtained as the creature disappeared as quickly as it appeared. After watching the news, Jiha immediately wondered about what his Terradrones were doing there at the accident site. At the same time, Kim, who had also watched the news, noticed that the unknown creature was not a destruction-level monster, and Seo Hyojin, on the other hand, concluded that it was a mythical-level monster, while Chaeyeon was only puzzled as to what was even going on. At the same time, a dark shadow loomed over the small and frightened Terradrones. However, Jiha was not really angry at them for their willfulness. Turning to the Terradrones, Jiha said that they should talk it over. Leaving their leader to handle it himself, the rest of the Terradrones immediately ran away from their master. Jiha wasn't going to scold them and told them not to be afraid because they hadn't done anything wrong. However, he still had questions about whether they were the ones who had ripped out the scroll and the ones who had appeared in Jiri-san and destroyed all the lick. Without answering anything, the Terradrone Knight ran off somewhere in a hurry, and a moment later, he came back in front of Jiha with a large pile of ether stones and essence, which sparkled brightly in the sun. However, Jiha was bewildered by being offered a bribe. All he wanted to hear was whether they were the ones who had appeared in the city. Still feeling guilty for what he had done, the Terradrone Knight nodded while expecting punishment for what he did, but to the creature's surprise, there was none of it. Jiha gently stroked him while telling him he wasn't trying to intimidate them, but just wanted to confirm and make sure that they were the ones who really did it. Jiha told the Terradrone with a bright smile that they had done an excellent job of cleansing Jiri-san. The misunderstanding had been cleared up, but the pile of ether stones and essences was still there. Looking at them, Jiha couldn't help but wonder about what he was supposed to do with them. He picked up a stone that was worth millions of dollars and noticed that the Terradrones received it by defeating the Elder Lick. Bam, who hadn't shown any signs of interest before, suddenly meowed and reached for the stone. Jiha saw this and asked if he wanted to play with it. Giving him the stone, which was costing millions of dollars, Jiha told the cat that he could take it. However, Bam was not going to play with the crystal, and having received what he wanted, Bam immediately began to chew on it. Watching him happily eat the stone, Jiha wondered if this was the source of the nature god's energy. He immediately thought that perhaps that was why the Terradrones had taken the stones and brought them to him. Finally, Bam finished eating and meowed contentedly. Now our boy Jiha was finally convinced that he was a nature god, as his behavior was beyond common sense. However, he didn't think of it much as he still had 15 essence stones that he decided that he will use it on improving his attributes. The first thing he decided to improve was his strength, and then it was stamina. As he used the stones, he felt a warm and bright energy which began to spread all over Jiha's body. Deciding to see if anything had changed, he stroked his hand around. The main reason why he decided to improve his strength was because he was a worker and needed strength to do stuff. Stroking Bam, Jiha told himself that he shouldn't be obsessed with getting stronger because he was just happy with what he already had and that it was enough for him. After a while, Jiha received a call from the Hunter Control Center, and they reported that they needed a dungeon latecomer for a big dungeon. Hearing that, Jiha immediately agreed without a second thought with a happy face. He was very excited and enthusiastic as he had never been to a real dungeon latecomer party before. Jiha soon arrived at the place where the other participants were gathering, and since there were quite a few people gathered there, he figured that the dungeon probably had to be huge than normal. Suddenly, a man called out to him, and he greeted Jiha as he said that they hadn't seen each other for quite some time. He immediately recognized the man as his old acquaintance, Mr. Kanewon-ho. The man couldn't contain his excitement, as this was the first time he had attended the opening of a dungeon of this level as a latecomer. Jiha also told Won that even he had never seen so many people at a latecomer's party before. Putting his arm around our boy's shoulders, Won-ho said that this time they might even be able to find something good for someone like them. Jiha replied that he didn't think they would ever get such a chance. However, the man still believed in the best, while he was saying something. Suddenly, something caught Jiha's attention. Hyejin returned from the dungeon, and everyone was awestruck by her elegant presence. She immediately attracted the gazes of everyone present because she was beautiful enough, even inside an armor, for everyone present there. While someone was saying that they have heard that she had once again completed the dungeon quest alone, Seo Hyejin suddenly noticed Jiha and immediately ran towards him without a second thought. Not understanding what was going on, Jiha stared at her in bewilderment. After greeting our boy, she asked him if he had come here to enter the dungeon with the other latecomers. Jiha nodded in agreement and added that he had gotten a call from the control center that they were short on people, so he came to help. While they were talking, the others present at the scene watched in amazement. There was no way that the sword witch would talk to some guy first. Hearing this, Hyejin immediately thought that this huge dungeon could be dangerous for Jiha, and she suddenly felt the urge to suggest something. With an awkward smile, she asked Jiha if it would be okay if she went along with him. She immediately added that if he went to the dungeon with her, he would be able to move around freely and not worry about anything. Jiha didn't mind such company, but he was a little embarrassed that they were now the focus of everyone's attention. Once the others saw that Seo Hyejin was talking to some ordinary guy, they too decided to try their luck, but it was in vain. As they approached her, they started to offer her to go with them. Someone even offered her all the authority regarding the dungeon. Everyone was so focused on getting her attention that they didn't notice our boy Jiha, who just stood there silently while feeling nervous. But Seo wasn't going to accept anyone's offer, and she didn't need anyone's help either. All their attempts to interest her were finally in vain. She was only interested in one person here, and it was none other than our boy Jiha. Ignoring the others, she smiled as she told Jiha to follow her, to which he nodded in agreement. Jiha and Hyejin were walking through a dungeon that looked very much like a forest. Hyejin turned to Jiha as she told him that she had heard that rare plants could be found in such dungeons, to which Jiha replied that many people actually passed the dungeon without even noticing or knowing about the rare items. Since they could hardly find anything worthwhile on the surface, Hyejin suggested going deeper to her companion. Jiha was completely fine with that, but something in his backpack suddenly started moving. As it turned out, it was Bayam, who was finding it hard to sit in the stuffy backpack for such a long time. Hyejin immediately saw the cute cat, and her eyes lit up with the desire to pet the very cute creature. She even reached out to pet it, but she was immediately rejected. While the lady was saddened by her failure, Jiha explained to her that Bayam didn't like being held by his front paws. Hyejin even pouted a little and noticed that the cat was really cranky. Bayam, who didn't want to sit in the backpack, immediately started to try and break free. The green grass and fresh air was more of a liking to him, and finally, having freed himself, he jumped to the ground. While watching the cute little white cat, Hyejin noticed that Bayam had gotten a little bigger since the last time she saw him. Petting the cat, Jiha replied that it was because of the rather expensive food he was feeding him. Meanwhile, he decided to not tell Hyejin that the last meal that Bayam had was a stone that was worth about 1 billion won. Since everyone was ready, Hyejin suggested that they should move out immediately and begin their adventure. As the duo continued their journey through the forest, the girl asked Jiha if he had seen the news yesterday. Jiha was surprised as he asked about the kind of news she was talking about. Hyejin replied that it was about a mythical level monster called Pterodrone. As soon as Jiha heard this, his heart skipped a beat and he was nervous, but he managed to hold back his emotions and pretend that nothing happened. Hyejin continued and told Jiha that she had even heard that the government had managed to find traces of giants in the Busan Ant dungeon. Jiha again remembered the devil ants dungeon incident and the memory of him slapping the devil ants, but cheeks were now clear to him once again. Hyejin continued to talk about how that dungeon was closed because of the danger in clearing it. Jiha chuckled nervously in his head because he knew that he was the giant all along. Although he was surprised to hear this, he had already guessed that his miniature world was connected to the dungeons of the real world. Suddenly, Jiha had to interrupt his thoughts because he saw Bayam, who was walking ahead of everyone, but now he stopped abruptly and adopted a fighting stance. Jiha was confused and was not able to understand about what caused Bayam to act like this. Jiha even asked Bayam about the matter, but it did not work. In the next instant, even Hyojin took a fighting stance and grabbed her sword. Turning to Jiha, she told him in a nervous voice that he should go back immediately. Taking out her sword, she stood in front of Jiha and Bayam, wanting to protect them as she fights. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew in the group's direction, and in the next instant, Hyojin was seized by a horrible but familiar sensation which made her froze in sadness and utter fear. The monsters appeared in front of them in an instant as they looked like some animated trees. Even though they were quite a distance away, their killing intent and madness could still be felt very clearly. Turning his eyes towards the sword witch, Jiha saw that the sword in her hands began to tremble greatly. He immediately asked Hyojin if she was all right, but Jiha was shocked by what the lady said. She wasn't fine at all because her body was frozen in place and refused to listen to her. In a trembling voice, she told Jiha that it was the same place where Seunghyuk disappeared. Jiha had already heard that Han Seung-hyuk, a hunter of the first rank, had disappeared in one of the dungeons and immediately understood that if it was the same dungeon, then the rank of this place had to be at least rank 5. Suddenly, pulling their roots out of the ground, the monsters began to advance towards the duo, and in the very next moment, the sound of a potion bottle being opened was heard by Jiha. It was Hyojin who, after controlling her fear and coming to her senses, drank the potion and resolutely stood up and told Jiha to run towards the entrance of the dungeon with Bayam. She herself was determined to solo the monsters and clean up the place, and even Jiha could see her determination. However, the problem was that even she wouldn't be able to deal with so many high-ranked monsters. Jiha was very worried about what to do, but just then, Bayam started emanating a blue aura and was also resolutely standing on the ground while looking at the monsters. In the next instant, Bayam rushed straight towards them without paying any attention to the shouts of Jiha, who tried to stop him many times. However, what happened next shocked everyone to the core. The monsters who saw Bayam also started to run away just like what happened before. One of the tree monsters didn't manage to do so, and the cat caught up with him very quickly. Grabbing one of the monster's limbs, Bayam was able to tear it off without much effort, and the monster had now lost his arm and howled in pain. The fingers of the severed limb had some seeds on them, which scattered around after Bayam tore the limb. Since Bayam stopped and didn't pursue it, the monster immediately ran away while screaming in its own language. Jiha and Hyojin were watching this phenomenon with their mouths wide open for the whole time. The cat came back to them as if nothing had happened, and Jiha saw that he was carrying something in its mouth and leaned towards it. Holding a seed in his mouth, Bayam looked at Jiha with shining eyes as saying that he had brought it for him. Guessing this same thing, Jiha took the seed out of Bayam's mouth and asked him if he wanted Jiha to plant it. Bayam nodded after hearing this, and Hyojin was watching the monsters run away. She had never seen a monster of such a high level run away from someone in fear. Taking Bayam into his arms, Jiha turned to the lady and said that they had more important problems right now, as the deeper places in the dungeon smelled of danger. Even the monsters that they had just encountered were only a small part of the whole place. Hyojin understood this fact already and didn't want to involve Jiha in all this, so she again told him to go back with Bayam. Tears appeared in the lady's eyes, and with desperation in her voice, she replied that she couldn't just leave when she found a small clue about his friend. So she decided that no matter what, she would continue her search. Jiha was really surprised by Hyojin's determination, and even when he had no desire to be in danger, he wasn't going to leave her behind. He gave a potion to Hyojin and told her that he would go along with her. The lady did not immediately believe what she heard just now and looked at Jiha in bewilderment. Jiha had a smile as he told Hyojin that he understood the dangers involved, but he believed that the sword witch would protect him. Taking the potion, Hyojin replied that she would do her best to make sure they could return home. Time passed, and it was already evening as the duo were traveling in the dungeon. However, they had no intention of stopping where they were. They continued to travel further and further, and at one point Hyojin suddenly stopped Jiha. She pointed at something ahead of them and asked him if he saw it too. Looking closer to where the ladyfinger was, Jiha saw a cave that seemed to have a faint light coming out of it. Jiha and Bayam looked at the place as they did not know about what was waiting for them, but they could only hope that the answer they needed was inside the cave. The best and only way to find out was to go inside and check it out. As the scene shifts, we see that all three of the group stood at the entrance, and after taking a torch and lighting it, Jiha noticed that there was no erosion inside the cave. Once inside, Hyojin started looking around carefully and suddenly saw something. She showed Jiha that she found a distinct trail of blood which was now dried out. Realizing that this could be the clue they were looking for, Jiha immediately told Hyojin in a firm tone that they should keep moving. Cautiously moving through the cave, the duo tried to find any clues that they can. Luckily, after traveling for a while, Hyojin shouted excitedly as she stared at something ahead of them. Jiha also saw that on the ground there was someone's broken sword as well as the body armor. Hyojin immediately started crying after falling to the ground because she was able to recognize these things like she had seen them yesterday. The things belonged to none other than her appa. Jiha immediately tried to calm her down, saying that there was still a chance that HR was alive. Patting Hyojin at her shoulders, Jiha told her that since the marks were only at the entrance, it could mean that her appa was able to heal and leave that place. Hearing this, Hyojin tearfully asked Jiha if this could really be the case, to which he nodded in a yes. Suddenly, Bayam approached them and tried to get their attention. Seeing this, Jiha was surprised and asked about what the cat was doing. It turned out that this time, Bayam was not trying to play as he normally would. In his mouth was some kind of green ball that shone brightly in green color. As soon as the ball was in the hands of Jiha, the system reported that it was a symbiotic egg. Looking at the egg, Jiha thought that he must have already heard about it somewhere. So to be sure, he decided to check on the information once he got back. His thoughts were disturbed by Bayam, who suddenly bit his hand with slight force. Looking at him, Jiha immediately knew that he wanted to be praised for the work he did till now. While petting the cat, Jiha told him that he had done a good job. Petting the cat was a good thing, but they were in a dungeon where they shouldn't linger. Since they had found the footprints, Jiha was sure that not all was lost yet, and hearing these words, even Hyojin had a glimmer of hope as she smiled happily. She told Jiha that she would definitely keep searching until she found her friend, and since they had managed to find clues and fulfill their original plan, she offered Jiha to go back. Standing at the exit of the dungeon, Hyojin thanked Jiha for his help, to which he smiled and replied that he had done almost nothing to receive praise. However, the lady didn't see it that way. While holding the armor in her hand, she replied that it was only because of him that they were able to find the traces of Huan Appa. After which she smiled brightly as she stated that she was always lucky whenever she was around Jiha. Hearing that, Jiha was a little embarrassed, and Bayam, on the other hand, was watching the situation with weird eyes. Breaking the awkward silence, Hyojin told Jiha that he could ask her for help anytime he wanted. Bayam watched this with obvious displeasure, and in the next moment he tried to separate their hands. However, Hyojin's affection went to him as well as she stroked the cat and said that she was grateful for his help too. Since it was already late, Jiha suggested that they should go by their own as he had to give his pet some snack. But besides that, he had one more important thing to do, which was very important. After returning back to the store, Jiha immediately started searching for information about the symbiote egg as he was flipping through each and every book he had. He knew that he had already read about the egg somewhere. Sitting on the pile of books was Bayam, who watched his master from above. He didn't really like it as he was eager to play. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he immediately jumped into the pile of books. Looking at the joyful Bayam sitting in the pile of books, Jiha laughed while taking the book off his head. Jiha said brokenly that he didn't think he would find anything in this book, and the only option that was left was to try and find out about the egg in the dream world. So he waved goodbye to Bayam and said that they would see each other in the mysterious forest. In the next moment, Jiha was already immersed in the dream world, and soon he found himself in his garden in the mysterious forest as usual. He was very happy to experience this sensation after so many hours of reading books. However, suddenly something surprised Jiha as he was puzzled and looked at the tree and wondered if it had always been so big. The surprises did not end there. On the branches of the tree, Jiha found some fruits. According to the information that the system provided, they were the fruits of the world tree. Jiha was surprised by how he could not think that this was indeed a world tree that he planted. The very next moment something caught his attention again. It was the pterodrones that greeted him cheerfully. While Bam tried to use them as toys, Jiha took out the egg from his bag and showed it to the pterodrone. He asked if the pterodrones happened to know what it was. To his surprise, the pterodrone knight immediately nodded in agreement, trying to say that knew what it was. Jiha was very happy by knowing this, and the next moment, the system sent a notification that the pterodrone knight was offering him an egg and asking it to hatch. Jiha immediately agreed and immediately gave it to him, and after taking the egg, the pterodrone began dragging it somewhere inside. Seeing off the procession with a glance, Jiha said with a smile that they could be relied on. At the same time, there was dinner time in the nest of pterodrones, and sitting on her throne, the queen was eating the goodies brought to her by the workers. Suddenly, the pterodrone knight appeared in front of her while carrying an egg. He immediately handed it to the queen, and putting aside all her affairs, she clasped the egg with pincers, while the workers brought the essence crystals and placed the egg in the center of the essence crystals. The queen embraced the egg again and began to incubate it. While the pterodrones were busy, Jiha was fooling around and babysitting Bam. The cat was also happy that Jiha did so, which made him purr happily. Jiha immediately stared at the tree, whose trunk was followed by a long chain of pterodrones. Moving like ants, they climbed to the top of the tree, and as it turned out, they did not go there for nothing. There was a majestic symbiotic moth hovering in the air above, who was incubated from the egg. In the next instant, the symbiote spread its wings and soared into the air, as a golden glow began to emanate from it and gradually surrounded the tree. The light disappeared and everything seemed to return to normal. However, something had definitely changed. While Jiha was admiring the tree, the system sent him a notification that a group of sleeping symbiotes had awakened. And as he looked at the giant world tree, the system told him that the restoration of the world tree has started. Jiha felt a pleasant light which was trying to lift him up, and everything around him was drowned in rainbow light as he read that the world tree was now restored. He was happy that the world tree was now healthy, but as soon as Jiha touched it, it was like he was teleported somewhere else entirely, and the system told him that the world tree bestowed its blessing upon him, and due to it, Jiha's dormant destiny has been awakened. Jiha's class was now fully revealed due to the blessing, and it was none other than the world tree's worker. Filled with this new power, Jiha was enthusiastic and decided to take a walk inside the forest with Bam. The awakening of the world tree seemed to have affected the entire forest, and it was much alive and felt like it was wilder. Jiha couldn't contain his excitement as he looked at them. Now, the forest from his dreams had become even more fabulous. He couldn't stop exclaiming that there was no way. As he strolled through the renewed forest, and even Bam found some fish for a light snack while strolling. The forest became bigger and wider, which Jiha was so happy to see. He was amazed to see that even the solar apples were now leveled up to level 2. Jiha's happiness was on cloud 9 and did not have any limits, as he thought that he would be able to make twice the amount of potions now, thanks to the monstrous amount of solar apple now available on the trees. Jiha was happy that he can sell a mountain of potions to every hunter who needed it. But he shook his head wildly while thinking that it was not the money for which Jiha started doing this work. Money was not his first priority, and the reason for which the world tree gave Jiha a chance inside the mysterious forest was far more important. Maybe it was because Jiha had some hidden or dormant destiny. He guessed that maybe the world tree wanted him to restore the whole world along with the world tree. He was in deep contemplation, but was brought back to the present by a loud meow of Bam, who was trying to get his master's attention. Seeing that, Jiha immediately guessed that Bam was hungry as hell. He sat down by his knees and opened his green big backpack to get a suitable tool, which was none other than a fishing rod, which he pulled while deciding that their lunch for the day was a red trout. Even Bayam was more than just thrilled by this idea of Jiha, as he was trying to catch the rod's hook even before a fish could. Jiha was now sitting near a water body and started fishing like a professional fisherman. As he waited patiently, Bayam followed his example and also waited for the fish. Finally, their patience paid off, and they hooked a big fish onto their rod, which was still struggling to go back to the water after being jumped out of it. Bayam and Jiha were celebrating like little children, and the cat's eyes even changed into stars, and he knew that he was finally getting the red trout. But in this forest of dreams, anything can happen. As soon as Jiha held the fish into his hands, he saw a status window above it. It was indeed a red trout, but as they read the description, it was written that by eating it, one could gain the extrasensory perception skill level 1 for 30 minutes, and this skill increased all the senses and reflexes of the caster by 20% for 30 minutes. Jiha knew that the description of an item was not that sufficient, and this detailed before the level up. Suddenly he had an idea. He left the red trout to his cat and started finding something from his backpack to confirm his theory. Taking out his dimensional pouch, Jiha carefully read its description from the system, which said that he could store items in it without risk of damaging them. But the description continued as it was written that this effect also worked when he entered another dimension. Jiha knew that the other hunters didn't have the system for them, and by using this method, Jiha would not have to explain the effects of potions and elixirs several times to them, and it would save him a lot of time in the future. Jiha was shining with enthusiasm and excitement as he picked up Bayam, who was still trying to enjoy the fish and wished to be left alone, into his hands, telling him that they should return to the store as Jiha had got a great idea in his head. As the scene shifts, we see that there was a huge crowd of customers outside Jiha's store who couldn't wait to get in, and it was feeling like a treasure hunt for everyone. Even when they all were into his shop, they were displeased by the other hunters also coming to the same shop. One of them asked the other in surprise if all the hunters in Seoul gathered at Jiha's shop today. His partner assumed that a rank 1 dungeon or something like that had opened up here, but it wasn't like that. Bayam's figure stood out in the crowd, and in his teeth he carried notes with numbers and handed them out to the people in line. Everyone liked this concept, and the hunters gratefully accepted the numbers from him. Seeing such a big queue, one ordinary passerby asked one hunter at the end of the line about what he was doing there along with the others. The hunter was surprised by his stupid question and, pointing his finger in the direction of Jiha's store, told the man that obviously they were waiting for a chance to buy potions. And even when he's standing there, he did not know for sure if it's his turn would come that day or not. The ordinary man was unable to comprehend anything the person told him and asked about what potions were. The hunter realized that he was just a civilian who didn't know anything at all. Meanwhile, Jiha was forced to put restrictions on sales so that everyone would have enough to buy his stock. One person was allowed to buy 3 bottles of potion, but before they could do so, they had to get a ticket with a number in the queue from Bayam. 2 of Jiha's potions were especially popular, a paralysis potion and a special health potion, and we come to know that Jiha decided to use his perfect handwriting skill to write beautiful labels explaining the effects of his potions on a big piece of paper. The paralysis potion increased resistance to paralysis by 35% for 30 minutes, and the special health potion restored 22% of maximum health for 13 seconds. The hunter at the end of the line kept explaining that these potions were made by the owner of this store, and they tasted good and had excellent effects, so even hunters from the nearby countryside came to buy some for themselves. On top of that, the price of these potions was as nice as their taste. Bayam was enjoying as he looked at the puny humans and almost tagged one guy in line as his territory, making him embarrassed and wondering about why the cat had to be walking right in front of him. Bayam then returned to his master as if nothing had happened, and he praised the cat for a job well done. His store was filled with customers every day and Jiha was happy with how business was going, and even though all he could do was create good potions, he was determined to make use of the abilities bestowed upon him by the World Tree. He wanted to use his abilities for not only himself, but also for everyone's sake and the greater good of humanity. He looked forward to the future, hoping he could help many more people. Customers came to the counter one by one, but Jiha didn't seem tired at all, as he did what he loved to do. He wished each and every one of his customers a good day like I do. Time flew by until he was disturbed by his acquaintance, Huang Sanyang, who awkwardly walked into the store as usual and greeted Jiha with a smile. Jiha immediately noticed her and greeted her cheerfully. Huang was primarily interested in why there were so many people here into Jiha's shop, and the reason for her visit was the news that she had seen in their hunting community. As Jiha was busy and can't do it himself, she decided to show it to him by herself right away. Everyone there was talking about some incredible store that was a sanctuary of rare yet affordable potions, so she decided to come and see it for herself just in case. But she got a great surprise when it turned out to be the one and only Jiha's store. Such fame even made Jiha a little embarrassed as he blushed a little. Looking at all the customers with number tickets, Huang sweetly asked Jiha if she had to get a number ticket to meet Jiha from now on too. But he assured the lady that of course this was not the case. Happy Hunters members could come outside of the line, and he would always be happy to see them, especially her. Taking one of the health restoration potions and looking at the label, she wondered if what the description says about it was true or not. It was the first time she had ever seen the effects of a potion so beautifully and accurately written down. Jiha assured her that everything written on the potion was really true, and he had even asked the hunters who had used his potions to confirm it. Huang was mesmerized by the effects of the potion while she was surprised at how much better the potion's performance was than the potions from other stores. They couldn't even be compared to what Jiha has made from his hands. She liked the potions so much that she wanted to buy more than the limit, arguing that she was a regular customer. But Jiha was strict about just this one rule and wouldn't let her. But instead of that, our boy prepared another surprise for the clumsy lady. From counter, Jiha pulled out a scroll and offered it to the lady in return for being a regular customer. Unrolling the scroll, she noticed that even when it looked a little sloppy, it was still beautifully written. The question that remained in her mind was about the effect of using this scroll. Jiha explained to the lady that the scroll was a charm which brought good luck. It was a wish creation scroll that allowed 2 small wishes of the user to come true. Jiha was worried a bit about Huang, since it was the first time he had made this scroll and didn't know what would really happen. But he consoled himself by thinking that there shouldn't be any problems with such a simple scroll. The lady immediately decided to try it out and obviously wished for a rare old book. But as expected, nothing happened that easily. As the scene shifts, we see that Huang was a dungeon mission with a squad from her guild. The battle was in full motion, and the flying fish with deadly jaws were attacking the guild members from different directions. After one of the strikes, the monster fish flew farther away than usual and flew straight at an unsuspecting Huang with a hovering trajectory. Huang was frozen at the place she was standing and didn't move an inch due to the confusion. The fish was already long dead, but still weighed enough to crush the poor girl from its body. Even the lady thought that she was going to die from the already dead fish monster and screamed in fear. The hunter who had launched the fish at the lady unintentionally already started apologizing. He didn't even notice what he had done, and another guy from their squad asked the swordsman about why he carried a sword if he was just going to beat his enemies to death. The swordsman apologized again and told them that he never would have thought that the monster would fly so far away. Huang was still lying on the ground, unconscious the whole time. She finally came to her senses and stood up, finally saying that she was fine, even when she was bandaging her bruised head. Suddenly, the scroll in her pocket lit up, and a system notification appeared in the screen, telling everyone that her little wish was about to come true. If she experienced a small misfortune, the chance of obtaining special items would get increased by 70% for 30 minutes. The scroll only had one use left now, and the lady was going to get more surprised as the floor beneath her feet began to crack. The entire dungeon shook along with the group of hunters who could barely stay on their feet, not realizing where the earthquake was coming from. In an instant, they were all falling into the abyss that had formed right under their feet. Huang was still trying to grab her precious book as she was begging everyone and everything to save them, hoping that someone would hear them. However, the hunters were not simple men and managed to group themselves as they fell. And they finally landed on their feet. One of the hunters even exclaimed they were not going to die from such a simple trap. Huang was the only one who landed clumsily and hit her back painfully as usual. She couldn't understand about why this kind of mishappenings were coming to her again and again. With a quick glance at where they were, the hunters found out that it didn't look like a trap made intentionally, but rather it was something else entirely. The mage lady from their group used the spell Guide of Light. Immediately, a golden butterfly materialized in front of them, glowing brightly and casting a warm light all around, revealing to the hunters that they were in a spacious storage room. In front of them were many treasures, weapons, and armor. To find such things in a dungeon can only happen due to unprecedented luck, and they wondered about what it all meant. The big question still remained about the worth of this huge pile of treasure. The swordsman found a nice knight troop longsword, and the paladin found a cool new armor and assumed the place they were in looked like a secret hideout. It seemed like everyone could find something of interest here. Suddenly, Huang noticed an ancient book on the floor with a strangely familiar pattern. Realizing how rare it was, she couldn't believe that it was actually a book that belonged to the Black Lion Knight troop of the Gemark Empire. For a bookworm like the lady, this was a true treasure, and her wish had finally come true, as her eyes were shining with happiness. But the paladin interrupted her, while telling her to be quiet because the place they were in might fall apart again. He suggested that they should all grab what they needed and leave quickly before it happened. The group made sure to do what their friend suggested and started heading up to the top again. As soon as they started climbing up, a second earthquake started. It seemed to them that they were in danger as soon as they get any items. Their squad leader lost patience and ordered them all to stop acting like fools, as it would be suicide to go further into the dungeon. They came to a mutual decision that they should go back now, as that would be the best option. But the trouble was not yet over. When the group was not that far away from the exit, just then they heard a noise from the dungeon behind them. It turned out that they were being chased by a huge swarm of fish-flying monsters that they had already encountered at the beginning into the dungeon. However, there were too many of them now. Seeing that, the group was left with only one option, and as you all have guessed, they had to run for saving their own skin. The hunters were scared and didn't look after Huang, who was clumsy as ever and was the last to run. She was just able to escape because a scary and huge worm, the huge fish-eating worm, broke through the wall and caught the whole pack of fish, and with that, the predator became the prey of a bigger predator. Scared by the creature's power, the hunters only had time to cover themselves from the dust and small stones that covered them, the worm's wraith. But they didn't know that the fish-eating worm wasn't interested in humans at all. Everything around the worm shook like another earthquake. The ceiling and walls began to collapse and large blocks of stone fell all around the confused hunters who were hugging each other. Huang cried out in desperation for the god Ark to save her, as she didn't want to die here. Her tearful plea continued for a while longer. She was even afraid to open her eyes, but since it was too quiet, she finally opened her eyes. She saw the confused faces of her friends as they were not able to understand what had happened to them and how they were alive. Even the surroundings around them was completely changed, and it was too bright. The hunters had no idea about what had happened and why the ruins and desert were present around them, and most importantly, where were they exactly. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha was having a pleasant time in his forest, watching the worms that plowed up the ground for him. They seemed like small creatures to him, but in this world, scale was something which cannot be trusted so easily. Jiha was glad that to find these earthworms, as due to them the soil in the forest would become very fertile in no time. Biam was also with him, and was happy along with his master Jiha by this achievement, as he confirmed with a joyous meow. While Jiha was wondering about what he should plant on the newly plowed ground, Biam was trying to find something in his master's backpack, and it seemed like he was looking for the right item. Few moments later, he brought his master a seed that he had got by killing an infected plant in the high-level dungeon the other day when they traveled with Seo Hyojin. When Jiha saw the seed, he immediately thought of the horrible plant monster that would grow from the seed and asked Biam if he really wanted him to plant it on the soil. Biam seemed to be confident as he nodded as a reply of Jiha's question. As Jiha looked at the seed in bewilderment and nervousness, Biam has already started digging a hole for the planting the seed. Biam was able to quickly dig a hole and even meowed while he was carefree, hinting Jiha to hurry up and not to worry. Jiha thought that as Biam has gotten the seed himself and he could do whatever he wanted with it. When the job was done, he asked the cat if he was satisfied, for which the cat nodded in agreement. Jiha was having a nice time in the forest, planting some saplings, but he had some very persistent visitors in his shop, and the humming bells immediately notified him with a chime. Jiha was surprised that someone had come to the store even when it was closed. He lifted Biam happily above him. He told the cat that they should return to the store as now they have planted everything. As they returned to the shop, Jiha started scrubbing the dirt from Biam, who was covered in dirt from top to bottom, working with the soil. But the noise outside the window quickly reminded him of the group of hunters. Jiha didn't understand why Huang had dragged them here and why she was so angry at him. They were all tired after traveling and were covered in mud as much as Biam was. Jiha hurriedly opened the door for them and was surprised at how they were all looking like ghosts. Huang was barely caught by the guild member in time to keep her from attacking Jiha with her fists. She was so eager to punch the bastard who had slipped her some sort of bad luck curse under the name of a good luck charm. Jiha was surprised to notice that the system description of the scroll had expanded to say that if the user of the scroll experienced a minor misfortune, the chance of getting special items would be increased by 70% for 30 minutes. That was an important clarification that changed everything. So he decided to give the lady the time to cool down and suggested that the whole group should come inside and wash up first. After a good shower, they all felt better, and the paladin even said that he could live now after the shower. While his girlfriend was awestruck with the cuteness of the cat, however, the cat was not so good with strangers and refused to accept any compliments from her. Now Jiha asked them about what had happened. The paladin was the first to start by briefly stating that they had entered the Viper dungeon, but suddenly earthworms appeared and completely destroyed the dungeon entirely. Hearing their story, Jiha wondered if this incident was the price for using the Scroll of Creation. The hunter told Jiha that the only relief among all the chaos was that they had found some secret hideout, but they lost too much time in there. Jiha was surprised to know that the group had found the night troops' secret hideout, but he was even more surprised when Huang told him that it was the secret hideout of the Black Lion Knights troop. Jiha really wanted to know more and asked the lady if she was talking about the Black Lion Knight troop of the Gemarch Empire. The girl replied in a yes, and she even added that she had something that would make Jiha lose his mind. It was none other than the ancient book with a gold lion on a black background engraved in it. It was the Knight Troop Commander's log book, an invaluable treasure for bookworms. There was only one problem in front of Huang. Everything in this book was written in an ancient language, so she was not able to read most of it. Fortunately for Jiha, thanks to the skills granted by the World Tree, he could read everything without any problems. The book started with how the monsters of the Estrum Kingdom started to cross the border, but just by listening to that, Huang was surprised that Jiha could read it all, and he confirmed that it was no problem for him. Hearing that, she took out a dusty map from her backpack and said that if he could read it, he must know what it was. It turned out to be a damaged map of the continent of Gehenna. This was just like a treasure for Jiha, and it was sure that Jiha had been lucky that day. Huang doubted that the damaged map was real, but Jiha assured her that he was sure of it. Then Jiha had a brilliant idea of what he could do with the map. He immediately took the clumsy lady by the hand, and with all the charm he could muster, asked for one favor. He asked the lady if she can lend the map to him for a few days. He even offered her squad a whole case of first-grade potions in return for it. It was a bargain of unprecedented generosity for the lady. Looking at the potions, the hunters asked her to lend the map to Jiha without a second thought. She just had to lend it for such a gift, and deciding to finally convince everyone, Jiha offered them extra potions for a whole month, because they liked his potions so much. Hearing this, they agreed to Jiha's demand in an instant, complimenting him that he was a great guy, but once the deal was made, he wouldn't be able to cancel it. That wasn't a problem for Jiha, as he had plenty of potions. While Huang's hunters were trying to drag her away from her precious book and the map, they thought it was just plain paper junk that they had gotten a week's supply of potions for. Jiha waved goodbye to them and wished them to be safe. He realized that suddenly he needed to do a lot of things if he wanted to prepare for business, along with reading the night troop commander's logbook. Bam was already starting to fall asleep, and Jiha realized that they should be heading back. Returning to the store and getting comfortable, Jiha decided that he could prepare the potions after he went to his forest garden. But before doing so, he wanted to check the map that Huang had lent him. Since it was the map that the night troop of the Empire was using, the detail and quality on the map was exceptional. Even the terrain, place names, and monsters that appeared in the area were recorded in great detail. Examining the map, he came to the conclusion that the elder lick that appeared in Jiri-sen came from the southern part of the Estram Palace, and the forest dungeon that Hyojin and he went to was near Mount Epido. If the map was complete and undamaged, he would be able to find out where all the dungeons where the monsters appeared from were located. And then he had another obvious idea about how he can find out more about it. All he had to do was ask the Pterodrones, as they were bound to know something about the map. Hoping so, he finally fell asleep for going to the dream forest once again, and as always, he found himself near the world tree in the forest that stretched out infinitely. Bam did not deny himself the pleasure of stretching out a little. But this time something was strange. The surroundings were empty, and no one had met Jiha and Bam, which made Jiha wonder about where all the Pterodrones had gone. Everything came to a halt when the humming bells rang out in full force, warning Jiha that a strong monster had appeared in this area. At first, Jiha didn't even believe that a monster was there in the forest, since it was calm and safe like usual. But the approaching evil energy and the sounds of battle quickly made Jiha realize that he was wrong. A Cyclops stood with a club in his hands, exuding its devilish aura. However, the Pterodrones were also at the defense work and had already surrounded the uninvited monster. Jiha in the dream world was much bigger than the Cyclops, but still he was a little surprised to see him here. The Cyclops was a disaster-grade monster that first appeared in China, and very little was known about it, other than its size and appearance, but it was said that dozens of hunters were sent out to catch this one monster, but they did not succeed in the mission. However, the Cyclops have never appeared in Korea till that day. He was actively swinging his club at the advancing Pterodrones who were trying to defend themselves. Knowing the threat, Jiha was surprised that Bam was not going to help the army in its elimination, completely entrusting everything to the small Pterodrones. Judging by the fact that no information windows appeared, the Pterodrones were doing fine on their own without any help. They used wooden shields and continued to advance on the Cyclops. Just in case, Jiha decided to record what was happening on the battlefield so that he could better know the strengths and weaknesses of the Cyclops in the future. Meanwhile, the Pterodrone Knight led his army of warriors forward with their shields forward. He successfully dodged the Cyclops' bat and was already approaching the monster's eye as he was about to pierce it with his sharp horn. But it wasn't that simple for them. Dark energy began to gather around the eye of the Cyclops. Jiha only had time to shout and warn his army to watch out, but the Cyclops shot out a deadly beam of dark energy that threw the Pterodrone warriors off their rhythm of fight. The beam was so massive and overpowered that it swept away everything in its path. Even the trees, rocks, and Pterodrones were out of his way. Jiha understood that this was the monster's ultimate weapon. It seemed that the Pterodrones had nothing to counter such an overpowered attack. The scratched night warrior managed to retreat to the others despite the damage, and it looked like he wasn't going to give up at all and ordered the others to do something in his language. Jiha wondered if the small creatures had a plan. At their Pterodrone Knight's orders, the other Pterodrones brought a large stone of ether from their supplies and threw it directly to him. And with quick movements, he chopped it into small bits, which were shaped like shields, and left a larger piece of it for himself. The entire Pterodrone's army was now protected by the new ether shields. Even Jiha was surprised as he saw this strategy of those cute creatures. They used the shields to build a wall of shields that was shiny and super reflective. However, the Cyclops was still ready to fire another beam of dark energy and finish his enemies. It took a precise aim and fired the beam on them. Jiha was not able to believe that the Pterodrones were intentionally going to be hit by the deadly beam of light directly, but the army knew what they were doing and was really confident in their new shields. At the moment when the beam hit the shields, our boy Jiha immediately realized the whole plan and was shocked by their cleverness. The Pterodrones used their shields as reflectors to deflect the attack, and they even used the enemy's weapons against themselves. They aimed the Cyclops' beam at his own arm and severed it along with the club. The hand straight up hit the ground while still clenching the club, and Jiha did not miss the opportunity to write it down onto his book. He wrote down in the book that when dealing with a Cyclops, the key strategy was to reflect its light rays with a shield made of ether stones. Now that the Cyclops was disarmed, the Pterodrones rushed back into attack mode as they were led by their commander. Cyclops screamed loudly in pain and tried to run away. But there was no escape for him. A few precise blows on his legs and knees were to be done, and his escape was quickly over. The Cyclops collapsed with a crash, and Jiha rejoiced, as if he was the one who had defeated the Cyclops himself. He was awestruck that the Pterodrones really did defeat the monster Cyclops. A squad of Pterodrones started flying into the air and flew closer to Jiha to greet and cutely salute him. Jiha was happy that they did well and praised them, telling them that they were really good in the battle. Bayam was also happy for the Pterodrones after he saw them working hard. Jiha was so impressed that he couldn't help but reward the army and decided to give them a whole mountain of yellow food, as well as dozens of ether stones. Everyone was happy by this gesture of their master, and even Bayam got a reward even when he didn't help at the time of need. However, Jiha's happiness was interrupted by a sudden notification from the system. When Jiha opened it, he saw many notifications that 10 essence units had arrived on his account. Jiha didn't understand where it all came from and what was up with him getting this much as a reward. In the end, he received as much as 325 units of essence, which shocked his to the core. Yon was sitting in her office, and while browsing the news, she noticed that something new had appeared on MANHWA once again. When she clicked on the new article, she was surprised to find that she had to spend 10 essence to read the article on Cyclops' core strategy. This was the first time she had seen this kind of system and didn't know about when it appeared on the website that can never be edited. However, a measly 10 essence was worthless for her because she could earn that much in no time by just walking around a few dungeons. Therefore, she boldly confirmed her request. She started reading and noticed that the Cyclops swung his club with just one eye, and from there, it shot deadly light beams of dark energy. Yon's interest was piqued in reading the article, as she wondered about the key to defeating the Cyclops. Just after she reached a certain point, a system window appeared in front of her again, asking for 10 more units of essence to see the final strategy for defeating the Cyclops. This pop-up was now annoying Yon to the core, as she grabbed her head and started banging it against the keyboard, while screaming that she didn't have any more essence. She wanted to find that damned bastard who had published the post on MANHWA and let him see and feel the same way. Yon thought that she would fry him to a crisp, as the bastard deserved it. Meanwhile, Jiha was relaxing on a tree inside the dream forest. Suddenly, some ominous feeling woke him up and made him feel that he is going to be in great danger. The next day, Kim arrived at work in the morning. As he got out of his car, he headed to the office normally. However, when he entered the lobby, he was immediately surprised by the noise and the number of hunters gathered inside the building. He hurriedly asked the assistant if there were any events scheduled for today that he didn't know about, but the assistant assured him that there was nothing like that at all. Kim wondered about why the hunters were gathered inside the building, and that too, this early in the day. The assistant quickly realized something and showed Kim the screen on his phone while telling him that an article on MANHWA was published yesterday. Kim had no idea about it and was wondering about what the Cyclops' core strategy had to do with these many hunters. The assistant explained that the hunters were angry because it took 10 essence to view the article, but to know the final strategy, another 10 units of it were needed. Kim knew that even possessing 10 units of essence was enough to get greatly increased stats, but what kind of them would boast about possessing 20 units of it? Even then, such people were found, and they shared their knowledge with their friends, and that's why the crowd of hunters had started gathering inside since yesterday's sunset. The assistant didn't know about who the author of the strategy was, but his writing was indeed amazing. Hearing this, Kim thought that Cyclops dungeons had never appeared in their country ever before, and since the threat level of Cyclops was at least level 6, it would be difficult for the hunters to unofficially pass these dungeons. The assistant corrected Kim by saying that it was rumored that all the hunters who read the article would be given a dungeon buff too. Finally, the gate to the dungeon really opened as glowing dots appeared on the screen, indicating the location of the Cyclops dungeons. Realizing what was about to happen, Kim ordered his assistant to go upstairs and call the intelligence team along with the emergency operations center. As the scene shifts, we see that everyone was gathered for a meeting where the representative turned on the presentation and argued that since it was impossible to access MANHWA server itself, it was safe to assume that there was no possibility of foreign intervention. All of a sudden, Kim asked everyone if they could trace the essence that was paid to MANHWA or not, but the representative told him that it was impossible, because it was assumed that it automatically belongs to the system provided to hunters. After a while, the assistant immediately told Kim that he had just received the test results came out, and just like the rumor said, the hunters who read the final strategy received a buff indeed. Kim agreed that all of this was giving him a headache now. He slammed his table as he jumped up from his chair and said that the Emergency Operations Center needs to put up a list of hunters who've signed up for the mission and monitor them all in real time. The hunters' safety was now their top priority. As the scene shifts, we see that Seo Hyojin and Chaeyeon were put together in the same team, thus doing a joint operation. However, the shield guy was standing with a large reflective shield and wasn't sure if it would really work with such a lineup. The Eternal Flame Guild's alchemist cum secretary didn't understand about why he had been brought to fight as it was unnecessary, while the others were saddened by the loss of so much essence that they had accumulated till now. But all their complaints were nothing to Chaeyeon, as she was excited till her inner core with a fire burning inside of her as brightly as her magic. Hyojin, on the other hand, was as focused as possible and asked the tankers to stand by until it's time to use the reflective shield according to the strategy. She decided that she and Hunter Kyung-beek will enter immediately after the attack is successful and was going to leave the rest to Chaeyeon to finish off the wounded Cyclops up. The Eternal Guild leader was confident in her abilities and advised Hyojin to not worry too much. Suddenly, the Cyclops attack buff activated and increased Yeon's attack power and critical damage by 15%. She was sure that her fire magic would definitely grill the monster to a crisp. Finally, the Cyclops spawned in front of the hunters, and it greeted them with its death ray without any delay. But the shield guy was fast despite being carrying a heavy shield. He managed to cover everyone with a reflective shield in time, and that was enough for Hyojin to sneak up to the Cyclops from the other side and use her powerful sword rampage to deliver a series of multiple heavy blows to the one-eyed monster's legs, which brought it to its knees. Even Chaeyeon didn't miss her opportunity to hit the Cyclops with a fire meteor, which made the monster scream in agony. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiho was sitting at his home with his white cat, as he watched the news that the Cyclops dungeons had ended without any catastrophes at all. Jiho rejoiced at the ladies' success, praising how they were both wonderful in many ways. The anchors on the news channel discussed the news that according to the Hunter Management Bureau Guildalines, the strategy for defeating Cyclops, which was published on the MANHWA, would be shared free of charge with other countries. Jiha was now sure without a hint of doubt that if he recorded a strategy in the Infinite Spellbook, it was inevitable for those strategies to be automatically uploaded to MANHWA. Thanks to this Cyclops strategy, he had already obtained more than 5,000 essences. And now he even had a plan to ensure an endless supply of essence. All he had to do was to share Pterodron's attack strategies on MANHWA to earn more and more essences. Suddenly, the humming bells rang and made Jiha come out of his thoughts. Jiha wondered if there was a monster once again who was dangerous. Even Bam didn't want to go anywhere and desperately resisted, but the cat knew that he would still have to go with Jiha anyhow. Jiha tried to drag him into his dream forest, but as he woke up, he was not in the forest, but on a lonely island around the sea. Jiha was shocked to know that he was teleported straight to a sea. But he was not alone, the Pterodrones were there too, and their commander was already flying towards our boy Jiha to greet him. Jiha extended his hand to offer it to the Pterodrone for landing, while he was happy to see him. But suddenly, a notice appeared in front of him that the wounded World Eater needed his help urgently. Jiha was not able to understand about where the creature called the World Eater was and looked around carefully, but he didn't see anything. Finally, the Pterodrone Knight told Jiha about where the creature was. He immediately pointed downwards and Jiha thought the World Eater was underground, but it was way simpler than that. Jiha froze in surprise when a fountain of water came out of that hole. Even Bam, who didn't like water at all, was already wet due to the sudden water encounter. He hurriedly jumped out of Jiha's arms and immediately began to dry himself, again wetting Jiha. Everything was crystal clear to Jiha now, as he understood that the island on which he was standing was instead a whale. World Eater was a huge whale, the size of which was hard to imagine in the real world. Jiha immediately climbed down from its back and stood on the shore nearby to look at the whale from the side. It was unbelievable that what he was seeing was the legendary World Eater. But judging from its appearance, Jiha guessed that it wasn't feeling well. Jiha was even able to feel its energy weakening. Something struck on to his mind instantly, and now Jiha understood the reason why so much essence in his hands right now. He took a whole handful of essence stones and fed them all to the golden whale, hoping that it would be enough to make the World Eater healthy. Jiha didn't understand what was happening while the whale was suffering so much suddenly. Finally, it seemed like its pain was overwhelming, and its whale let out a kind of roar as it opened its wide mouth. A bright light of blue color flashed in the surrounding that made Jiha and Bam turn away and cover their ears to avoid getting hurt. The whale's body was also shining with a bright light, and it seemed like it was finally over. There was a sudden silence which was broken by the sound of water. Jiha and Bam lay exhaustedly on the sand trying to regain consciousness, but their sacrifice was not in vain, because a notification popped up in front of Jiha that thanked him for helping the World Eater, who had returned to its original form due to him. Jiha was greatly relieved after he heard this news, as he finally knew that the whale was better. He finally tried to stand up, but realized that his head was still spinning and he was still dizzy. But suddenly, all his tension vanished as he saw immense cuteness in front of him. The World Eater had shrunk in size considerably and was now the cutest little whale that Jiha ever saw. He immediately rushed towards the whale and hugged it. He was amused by how soft the World Eater was. But Bam watched everything with great envy and resentment, jealous of his master who dared to pet someone other than the cat himself. At last, the World Eater sailed off into the endless seas, while Jiha watched it and said his goodbyes. Now he was sure that using that much essence was worth it after all. But Bam thought otherwise and still resented his unfaithful master. Suddenly, the whale returned and began to speed toward the shore. Our boy Jiha wondered about why it had returned to him. The World Eater jumped out of the water right in front of them, and in an enthusiastic manner, it showered them once again with water. Jiha thought that he was just playing and fooling around by getting him and Bam wet once again. But as it turned out that it wasn't the only reason, Jiha was surprised to see what he looked at. It was a bunch of seafood for every taste that was the World Eater can give its master. He happily asked the World Eater if it was really going to give all he brought to them. The golden whale waved his head in a yes, and Jiha thanked the whale for the gift and promised to enjoy it. Bayam and Pterodrones were already taking everything for their own use. Finally, they said goodbye to the World Eater, and having received the fish, Bayam was more likable and had nothing against their new friend. Jiha wished to reunite with the World Eater in the sea in good health, as he smiled slightly. Just a few hours later, there was breaking news in the whole world that a huge sea monster had appeared on the coast, in the southern coast of the Korean peninsula. The military was preparing to meet the monster with a dozen of army helicopters, who were patrolling the coastline, which was fortified just for such occasions. The monster suddenly appeared out of the water, and all the helicopters were useless scrap metal that exploded in an instant by its tentacles. The giant octopus started moving towards the shore with a malicious intent, and it seemed that neither the military nor the hunters could stop it. It was moving with insane speeds and was heading straight for the residential building of the city. In front of its massive tentacles, even the military scattered in panic, while they ran away in the hopes of saving their lives. They were not able to understand about why the hunters had not gotten there yet. Suddenly, one of the workers noticed another giant creature and immediately reported it to his captain, who didn't understand what it was. It was none other than the World Eater, and compared to him, the octopus looked small and insignificant. Looking at him, the military were shocked, as his size was enormous, and the soldier knew without a doubt that the whale was a destruction-grade monster. The monster octopus was deeply struck by fear and knew that he was in trouble. He instinctively began to move back into the sea, hoping to hide somewhere. But the creature failed miserably, as the whale opened its mouth wide and sucked the poor monster octopus in with a large amount of water. He was still trying to get out with his tentacles, but it was useless. The bottomless pit of the great World Eater was not letting the octopus monster do anything at all. The World Eater turned around and swam back to the open sea, acting like nothing has happened just a few moments ago. Kim was watching every bit of the accident closely from inside his office and was quite surprised by the behavior of this destruction-grade monster. He came to the conclusion that the giant whale was actually a demigod who made a contract with the first awakened person a long time ago. His assistant told Kim that the description of the creature was almost identical to the appearance of the demigod's appearance in the records. However, just to be sure, they still needed to take a closer look at this case, because there was a new rumor that the wandering sea monsters that were usually roaming near the Korean peninsula had been pushed out to southern Japan. Kim was confused and was not able to comprehend about what in the world was going on, as he slammed both of his hands onto the table in frustration. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha had gotten better and was now sitting with Huang, who brought a stack of old Estrom books that she had found at the bookstore, as there was a lot of them in stock these days. That couldn't have pleased Jiha any more than that, because he was a certified bookworms, but Jiha handed over Huang the Estrom Kingdom map, while telling the lady that it was the extended map that he had been drawing. But unfortunately, Jiha told her that it was just an extension that covered the areas near the Tails River. Jiha explained that he had made it with reference to the Night Troop Commander's logbook, so it was not perfect in any sense. But after looking at it, Huang was awestruck as she wondered about how Jiha made such a detailed map himself and described it so well. Hearing that, Jiha laughed nervously, as he knew that the Pterodrones were the ones who went to each and every place by themselves. At the same time, Huang was surprised even more by the fact that even the roads had been drawn so properly. Jiha knew that the incomplete map would be completed as soon as they add the southern area of the Tails River. Seeing Jiha taking so much interest in the Estram Kingdom, Huang curiously asked Jiha about why he was working so hard to restore the map, because he was too passionate into it for it to be just a hobby. Jiha smiled beautifully as he told Huang that the reason he did so was because he wanted to help someone. Telling that, Jiha started to remember that Han Seung-hyuk was definitely still alive somewhere in the Gehenna continent. Jiha knew the effective use of the abilities that the World Tree had granted him. He would definitely be able to find him. Huang immediately realized something and asked Jiha if that someone he was talking about was a woman instead. Hearing that, Jiha immediately denied, but Huang somewhat took it as a hoax and told Jiha that she was tired and was going to go home to get some sleep. She even had to leave early in the morning. The next day, hearing that, Jiha told his goodbyes to the clumsy lady and told her that she should stop by his store tomorrow to take potions before business hours. Jiha even remembered that Huang was going to a rank 3 dungeon, so he already put a lock of resistance potions. Hearing that, the girl was happy as she thanked Jiha for his concern as always. Jiha thought that thanks to Huang, he had been able to gather more information quickly and even discovered one more rune word. Remembering the runes, he looked at the infinite spell book as he looked at his new creation, the Scroll of Change Pursuit. This scroll allowed the player to find a living being's trace and confirm their location. He tore the page where the rune word was written and used it to find Xiao Haijin while thinking about her. Suddenly, he was able to see her image that appeared before his eyes, and now, Jiha not only knew the location of Haijin, but the scroll was also showing him the energy that she was carrying. He immediately realized that the scroll he had was very useful and could come in very handy in the future. Suddenly, Bayam meowed and jumped on the table, demanding attention from his master. Jiha took the cat into his arms and apologized to him because the place was so noisy. Bayam hugged Jiha to its heart content and was very happy now. Jiha suggested to the cat that they should go to their dream garden and have dinner. The white Actus cat was delighted with the idea, and they decide to fall asleep. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha noticed the first thing that caught his eyes, and that was how clean the water has become. Jiha wondered if it was so, thanks to the cute world eater. Jiha was still in for more surprises. As he saw the solar apple, he noticed that their level has also been increased, and it was now at level 3. Jiha got deep inside the forset and greeted the pterodrones that seemed to have gotten bigger, and their numbers had also increased. Jiha apologized to the cute creatures for the delay because he was so busy in reading old books. But the pterodrones were not upset, and instead, they were carrying the fruits of the world tree that they harvested in the meantime. Jiha immediately noticed that there were more of the fruits than there were before. Everything was going smoothly, and he praised his pterodrone knight along with the others for a job well done. Pterodrone Knight suddenly flew up to Jiha and started pulling his shirt towards the sky. Jiha wanted to know about what had happened, but it was kinda not possible. The Pterodrone Knight just pointed to the top of the world tree as it flew there, and Jiha guessed that he was getting invited by the pterodrones to climb up the tree. It was a funny scene as Jiha had never been known for his physical fitness and was also a bit clumsy. He tried his best to get to the top, and only a little bit more climbing was left. He was shocked by the beautiful scenery that he was finally able to see after he climbed the tree. He could even see Mount Apido, and it meant that the Gehenna continent was really outside the garden. Suddenly, Bayam became anxious and a little angry as he looked down and glared at something. Jiha thought that he was hungry and wanted to go down and feed him right away. But the real problem was about how he would be able to climb down. Jiha was somehow able to muster some courage and going down the tree trunk, but suddenly he felt as if something grabbed his leg and tied him up. Jiha looked at his side in nervousness and saw that it was the evil plant that resembled the monster from which the seed was planted by Bayam. He screamed with all his might as he begged the Pterodrone Knight and Bayam to save him. He kept screaming in fear and called out to someone for saving him, but it was all in vain. The plant monster let out a frightening roar, and it looked very ferocious to Jiha. But to his surprise, the next second, he realized that there was no need to save him because the plant monster was friendly. Jiha was safely put to the ground, and it seemed like the plant did a prank with Jiha to scare him. This plant was even cute, and Bayam didn't mind sitting onto its head. But Jiha still had some fear in him, so he awkwardly thanked the plant by touching but not touching him. Seeing that, the plant bounded Jiha with its vines and started clinging to him. The cute plant just liked to hug people and didn't want to hurt them. But there was a big question about whether it was worth publishing about the plant on the MANHWA or not. After some time, Jiha got used to his new friend and was not afraid of him now. He began to look around the tree and decided that they must cross this plain to get to Mount Epido. The name of this mountain sounded familiar to Jiha, as he remembered that this was the place where the survivors who had managed to escape the Estrem kingdom were heading. According to the information received by the Pterodrone, the dungeon where they found out that Hyjin's friend was alive was located on the south of the Estrem kingdom, near the Tails River. Jiha connected all the dots and came to know that the Tails River flowed right behind Mount Epido. Eventually Jiha realized that where he was facing right now was the south of Mount Epido, and the Tails River must flow behind it. Jiha began to trace the map while hoping that if he went to Mount Epido, he could find more traces of Han Seung-hyuk. But as he was walking, he hit an invisible barrier that prevented him from moving on, just like how he encountered in the beginning. But he still had his cute friends who accompanied him. He told the Pterodrone Knight that he should go along with his army and should take this opportunity and scout the area by themselves. The Pterodrone army was immediately ready to carry out the order of their master and replied in a yes, sir. The army was moving towards the mountain and Jiha decided to go eat something with Bayam. But as soon as he turned to call his pet cat, he was startled by what he saw. Bayam was gone somewhere without getting noticed by Jiha. He even tried to find the cat everywhere he can think of, but it was all in vain. This was very strange according to Jiha because even when Bayam roamed around, he always ate first before leaving. Suddenly, a light leaf touched onto Jiha's shoulder and almost made him scream. But there was nothing to worry about as the leaf was of their new plant friend, who signaled Jiha about where the Actus cat had gone to by running. But by looking at the scary face of the plant, Jiha was not able to comprehend if he can trust the plant or not. When everything was in vain, Jiha was shattered inside his heart by losing his precious Bayam. Jiha returned back home, and as he sat down, he clenched his hands together and was sulking internally. Eventually, he was not able to control his tears and slammed his head onto the counter, while thinking about where his Bayam had gone without him. Jiha was getting sadder than usual when he thought that the pair of Bayam and Jiha still had to do so many things together. His sadness and gloominess broke as his friends appeared outside his shop. It was none other than the Sword Witch Iseo Hyojin and Kim Hyung, the head of Goryeo Group, who saw Jiha in such a down state for the first time. Jiha immediately jumped up and greeted the guests, and the first thing that he asked Hyojin was about the gentleman who was standing next to her. But before she could even answer and introduce him, he came up to Jiha and introduced himself as Kim Hyung-suk, who was the head of the Hunter Management Association. He was really glad to have the opportunity to get to properly greet Jiha. Kim even asked Hyojin to arrange for them to meet again sometime. Kim straight away came up to the point and told Jiha that he thought that the potions made by Jiha were quite extraordinary and useful. Nothing like them could be found anywhere else. Jiha was flattered and blushed by only this little praise and thanked Kim for it. He asked both the guests to wait while he brought some tea for them. As Jiha set the table and put 3 cups of tea at the top of it, Hyojin told him that she was quite surprised when Jiha contacted her first. Hearing that, Jiha told the Sword Witch that he had something important to tell her. The lady was surprised by this revelation while Jiha told her that during a recent study of an ancient book, he had found something that would help her greatly. After telling this to her, Jiha handed her a scroll, and as soon as she opened the scroll, it read the title, Scroll of Change Trace. Even Head Kim was surprised as his mouth was open in amusement. Jiha smiled as he happily told Hyojin that the scroll would help her find Seung-hyuk. But Kim was still bewildered by the fact that Jiha made such an overpowered scroll by himself after just reading an ancient book. How did he manage to make it just by translating an ancient book? But Hyojin interrupted the head's questions, who advised Jiha to keep it a secret. Suddenly, there was silence everywhere, which was broken first by Kim, who was adjusting his glasses as he asked Jiha with a straight face if he made a contract with a part divine. As soon as he heard this question, Jiha had a flood of thoughts coming right into his brain. He tried to understand about how Kim could know about demigods. Jiha tried to be oblivious and asked about what a part divine was. Hearing that, Kim Suk clarified that part divines were also called as demigods. As the situation became uncomfortable, Kim suddenly retreated with a smile and assured Jiha that he would not be forced if he did not want to tell him about the abilities he had, and how he uses them was completely up to him. But Kim wanted Jiha to know that he had become a very important person in the South Korean hunter society. Kim told him that, thanks to his potions, the survival rate of hunters went up by 20%, and only this has made that hunter management to be indebted by Jiha. Kim immediately gave Jiha his card and told him to not be shy and use it whenever he needed anything. Hunter management will support him at all time. Jiha was not sure as always if he deserved all of this, but Kim assured him that he was more than deserving because he was going to be the future of the hunters. But his persuasion stopped at the moment when Seo Hyejin became angry from Kim. She was angry by the fact that Kim was again talking about work, while he assured her that he wanted to meet Jiha in person and get to know him personally. But Kim assured her with a smile that he was indeed talking very personally right now. Hyejin immediately apologized to Jiha while explaining to him that manager Kim was a well-known workaholic. So he was not that good at normal conversations. Jiha brightened his smile and thanked Kim for everything, saying that he appreciated everything and would definitely treat Kim to a nice meal next time. Kim immediately blushed as he did not get that many meal offers. You finally sent Kim home with a crate full of different types of potions. Seeing this hospitality, Kim told Jiha that hunter management will remember this favor forever. Hyejin sighed and said that Kim was perfect at his job, but nothing else. But Jiha found him cute in his own way. After they were alone, Jiha asked Hyejin if they can talk more after they were inside. Hearing that, Hyejin agreed, and they got inside Jiha's house. Jiha was drawing something onto the pages of his magic spellbook. When he was asked about what he was drawing, he asked Hyejin to give him just a few minutes as it was almost done. Few moments later, he put two drawings in front of her, where one was a mountain with a river and the other was the ruins of the Estrom kingdom. Jiha admitted that his drawings were not perfect, but still advised her to use the scroll he had given her earlier if she saw a similar landscape in one of the dungeons. Hyejin had to focus her thoughts on Han Sunjuk. Saying this, Jiha thought that if he was nearby the scroll, it would definitely show Hyejin where he was. He told the lady that he would have tested the scroll himself, but he made the scroll using the last remaining ink. Seo immediately began to thank him and started shaking his hand with tears coming out of her eyes. To calm her down a bit, Jiha assured her that he believed that Han Sungyuk was alive somewhere, and Jiha himself would do his best to help her find him. Hyejin was looking at him while she said that Jiha was a kind person. But our boy laughed it off by saying that it was nothing. They were good friends, and friends are meant to help each other. Suddenly, Hyejin came too close to Jiha as she told him that if he needed help with anything, he should let her know. But Jiha was just thinking that the sword witch was way too close to him. Suddenly, Hyejin noticed that the cute little Bams was not with Jiha and asked him about where the cat was. Hearing this question, Jiha immediately started crying while he told Hyejin that Bam had ran away from the house. As the scene shifts, we see that Bam was quickly running through the thick of the night forest, and in an instant, the little kitty turned into a large white tiger and his eyes glittered in blue color. The now majestic Actus stood on a rock with elegance. Standing there, he looked down as his eyes were fixed on another nature spirit animal. It was a demigod who, despite his weakened body, torn apart thousands and tens of thousands of times, did not back down. In Bam's opinion, he was foolish, but still, he was a faithfully devoted one and was guarding his position until the end. Bam told the spirit that Arctus, the fang of the god, came to find him himself. We see that there was someone down the cliff who was bounded in chains and was surrounded by orcs. This nature spirit animal looked like a giant wolf and was the one who conveyed the will of the god. He was known as the one and only Growler. We see that multiple fat orcs of green color have surrounded a wolf while forming a circle. They had chained the wolf from every corner, and even his legs and mouth were sealed. It was named Growler and was the will of the god. Even after being chained from every possible direction, whenever Growler moved even just a little, the orcs were terrified to their core, suspecting that their time has come to be finished by the wolf. Suddenly, an orc soldier sensed a shadow of a creature, and as he turned around, he saw that it was none other than the Nature's Fang Actus, also known as Baum, who was surrounded with a blue aura as he looked at the miniature orcs who were puny in front of his majestic body. He gave an intense glare to them, and the whole army was terrified by the presence of the Nature's Fang. They were not able to comprehend about what they should do to defend against such a big foe. Actus' eyes glow and gave of a faint blue color, as he told the orc army telepathically to get lost, as they were the ones who were enslaved by evil. Hearing that, the whole army almost peed their pants and ran away as fast as they could from the terrifying but mystical creature. The damaged Growler saw Actus and asked him about what he, who was a coward, was doing in front of him. All of a sudden, the cat started biting off each and every shackle which was binding Growler from the ground. This act of the cat finally freed the wolf as he told Growler that his meaningless atonement ends then and there. But Growler thought that Actus was just an arrogant cat and was doing as he pleased. The cat told him with a smile on his face that the World Tree's restoration has finally begun. But Growler seemed to not care at all, as he told Actus that only the god can order him around. He even called Actus a stinky cat and asked him to go away. But hearing that, the Nature's Fang bit Growler onto his neck with as much force as he can muster. Even Growler was surprised by this behavior of the cat and asked him about what he was doing. Suddenly, as Actus raised Growler from the ground, he started shrinking down by every passing second and slowly turned into a cute little puppy of a wolf. Actus was now holding the wolf inside his jaw as he told the mutt that he was not there to ask for the wolf's opinion. He even asked Growler if he forgot that Actus was the god's proxy and acted on his behalf. The cute wolf started screaming and shouting as he demanded the cat to put him down. But Actus had something else in mind as he was running somewhere with insane speed, while telling the cute little wolf to stop yapping and give up. As the scene shifts, we see that Jiha was outside the Eastram Kingdom's gate, where the Elder Lick was when he fought with the help of his Pterodrones. He thanked Huang and his hunter group for taking him to a Category 3 dungeon along with them. The shield guy told Jiha that it was no problem at all, since it was nothing compared to the insane amount of free portions that Jiha was providing them. But Hong wanted to know about the reason why Jiha wanted to come with them, as there was nothing but an item box in the ruin-type dungeon. But Jiha informed everyone with a smile that the Black Lion Knight commander helped survivors from Eastram to escape during the war. So Jiha was thinking that maybe the refuge was connected to a secret tunnel somehow. Hearing that, Huang's face lit up as she told Jiha that maybe she didn't look too closely. But even she noticed that the architecture looked similar, and there must be something that they can find if they searched. With a disappointed and ignorant face, the swordsman told them that he didn't care about the ruined kingdom. Instead, he just hoped that there was some crazy artifact inside of it that he can find. Jiha exclaimed that the sword he had looked pretty good. It was none other than the knight's long sword with a strength and endurance of +5, along with agility of +3. The sword even increased the skill traits and even had the knight's pledge, which increased the party attack by 7% for 5 minutes. As Jiha was blabbering what he was read out loudly, the swordsman, along with the whole hunter group, was surprised. As the sword guy asked Jiha about how he knew everything so specifically and in this great of a detail. Jiha immediately realized that he got into the flow and forgot that he was the only one who can see everything inside his system. But he had to reveal something now as his friends were asking him. Jiha scratched his head as he informed the hunter group that he had recently got an appraisal skill. Even hearing that, everyone was shocked to the core. Huang was a genius to instantly realize that the appraisal was the reason by which Jiha was able to write the potion's effect so precisely. The shield guy asked Jiha to tell him about the equipment he was wearing, while telling him that he found it with the longsword. Jiha glanced at the stats of the armor and told the guy that it was the light chest armor, which increased defense by 10% and critical defense by 5%. The mage lady congratulated Jiha with a huge smile because he finally got a skill. Even Jiha thanked the lady while scratching his head and blushing in embarrassment. Suddenly, both the boys started playing around with Jiha with their shoulders hanging onto his neck. They started teasing our boy that he was so lucky and asked him if they were going to be rich now as he got this overpowered skill. Hearing that, Huang boiled with anger and bonked both the greedy hunters with her huge green book. She was angry on both of them and asked them about how they dared to think about using the innocent Jiha as soon as they knew about his skill. Even the mage lady was surprised by what Huang did to her boyfriend. Her tone suddenly changed as she politely warned Jiha by telling him that it was nice that he got a skill, but he had to be careful because there were hyenas like the two hunters who were scattered all around the world. The mage lady smiled and Jiha nervously nodded in agreement to whatever his companion said. But as they were going inside the dungeon, by forming a straight line, Jiha knew that whatever Huang was saying was true, and he indeed had to be careful. Suddenly an idea struck Jiha's mind, and he decided that he should ask Mr. Kaikim on how to use his skills for good. Suddenly, the shield guy smiled as he pointed towards an entrance to the castle and told everyone to gather around him. As they entered from the gate, they saw a huge hole into the wall. They guessed that it must be broken by the attack of the monsters. Suddenly, the whole group was awestruck with their mouth opened wide as they saw something in front of them. It was revealed that what they saw was the beautiful Thales River, which was bigger than they could ever have imagined in their dreams. The water was so clear that the hunters were asking each other if they wanted to swim inside of it. Jiha immediately sat down onto the shore as he took out his endless magic book, along with his blue feather to write down whatever he was going to observe. He wondered about how the knight made the secret tunnel when the river was so deep. Jiha started writing whatever he saw. Jiha was happy that he finally got to check behind Mount Aipido and found out more information. But Jiha was not alone this time too. As he was drawing the rough sketch of the map, the whole hunter group except Huang assembled behind him, while the swordsman told him that he was drawing the place as he almost took a picture out of it. The shield guy was also amused by Jiha's skill, asking him if there was anything he was bad at. As the group was laughing and Jiha was continuing to draw, he noticed that Huang was sitting at a distance far away from all of them, and her bag was again glowing with a faint yellow aura. Suddenly, the scroll of creation activated once again. Jiha knew that something bad is surely going to happen to the lady due to the scroll and immediately screamed as loudly as he can, even knocking the whole group down to the floor and scared the mage lady. Even when Huang noticed that Jiha was screaming and trying to tell something to her, it was too late as she dropped down into the river like a coconut falling from the tree with a curved trajectory. Jiha ran towards the lady and almost caught her, but he was late by just a second and the lady was already splashed into the river, while thinking about why it was she who was always unlucky. The situation immediately became dangerous as Huang started drowning deep inside the river. Somehow she was able to swim back to the surface and asked for someone to help her. Everyone from the hunter group panicked and ran towards her direction in the hope to save her at all cost. Huang was not able to breathe and somehow asked her friends to help her urgently. Even without a second thought, Jiha jumped onto the clean and reflective water of the river and started swimming towards Huang, who was still somehow able to hold on to the surface of water. As Jiha swam towards the lady, a silhouette of a whale materialized behind him. As he turned around to see what it was, he saw that it was none other than the World Eater, who came to help Jiha save the lady. The World Eater swam with its insane speed and made Jiha sit onto its back. Both Jiha and Huang were saved by the majestic body of the World Eater as it came above the ground after rescuing the lady. The whale's body was shining bright golden in color due to the sunlight and the water that reflected the light. The group was still running towards their direction, but seeing such a huge creature on the water surface, all three of them were stunned to the core. Jiha was still worried about Huang and asked her if she was all right, but Huang screamed, while crying that hell no, she was not all right at all. After saving Huang and getting her onto the ground, all three people from the group were trying to console their fourth member. Meanwhile, Jiha thanked the World Eater with a smile for helping him in such a dangerous situation. The World Eater smiled cutely in response to its master, as he was not able to believe that something so cute was such a huge golden whale. After Huan was all right, she screamed at Jiha from a distance, surprising him. As he turned around, the group called out to him and told him to come towards them as soon as possible. As soon as Jiha got to them, all four of them formed a circle and Huang pointed at the ground below them, while telling Jiha to look at it. Jiha was surprised to see that it was a magic circle which was present there in their plain sight all of a sudden. But to everyone's surprise, Jiha smiled while looking at the circle, and it seemed that he recognized it very well.